Alrighty, good morning. I will call to order our CIP workshop here this morning. We will start it off with a flag salute. So if everyone can please stand, face the flag, place your right hand over your heart, and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Madam City Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Alexander?
I'm here.
Mayor Kalpis?
Here.
Councilmember Ron?
Yep.
Councilmember Schwank?
Here.
Councilmember Stewart?
Here.
All right, we have one business item on the agenda today. It is affirm the adopted fiscal years 2026 through 2030 capital improvement program priorities. We'll start off with public comments. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments this morning?
Mr. Mayor, we do have one public comment, and it is from Louis Todd. Mr. Todd, if you would like to come up to the podium, you have 5 minutes, sir, as this is an agenda item.
Good morning, Mr. Todd.
Good morning, Mayor. Council members, thank you. My name is Louis Todd. I live at 30110 D Portola Road. My wife and I moved to Temecula in 1986 when there wasn't a traffic signal in town. We live in the Los Ranchitos Homeowners Association, and I'm the president of our Homeowners Association. And our genuine concern has been traffic, right, and speed limits. And we've spoke before the city council many times. I see in the capital improvement project, specifically Inez Phase 2, which is proposed widening to 4 lanes, as well as the Inez, or La Paz widening future. And we want to get a commitment from the city council and the city staff moving forward that process would be removed from our neighborhood. We're one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city of Temecula, and we've kind of been used as a cut through, right? Not necessarily by design of anybody here at the city, but because of technology and the fact that Temecula Parkway has added a few additional traffic signals. Right now, Waze and other MapQuest type systems tell the homeowners that live further out in our neighborhood to cut through our neighborhood because it's faster. Now, we're really pleased in working with the city as well as Ron Marino and Nick and helping us and Jessica and helping us get the speed limit reduced from 45 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour in front of our house. Still really not acceptable, right? It's still way fast, which means you're probably not enforcing the speed limit unless somebody's going at least 10 miles an hour over. So that's 50 miles an hour in front of our driveway. Our neighborhood's pretty unique in that we don't have a buffer zone in our neighborhood because we were here before the city really became this big city. And so I think even in your plans, you would never allow to build a new housing development with the current setup that's there. What we don't want it to be is sacrificed, right? We don't think that because we were here first means that we should be treated anything less than other new developments coming into our neighborhood. And so we would just ask that you would consider helping our neighborhood in protecting our ability to actually go out of our front yards and walk down the street. Right, we're a equestrian community, and so we have a lot of horse traffic through our neighborhood, and we are really genuinely concerned about safety. We also have bike lanes, and lots of people use the bike lanes through, especially on that main corridor. And we just would like to see this officially removed from the capital improvement so that we don't have to consider that it's going to happen all the time. We don't have to then focus on this particular aspect in our lives. It's not easy. I have a granddaughter that's 3 years old now. We were fortunate that she lived with us for about a year before our kids were able to save enough money to buy a house. And a whole level of safety came of where. My first granddaughter, and we just really, really have a genuine concern. She's now at the point where she's starting to learn how to ride a tricycle, and next it'll be a bicycle. And so we want to see that neighborhood be safe for our grandchild and grandchildren to be able to ride their bikes through our neighborhood. And we can only do that with the help of you guys, right? You at the city council, you're the one that creates the direction. And we would really encourage you to help us out as homeowners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Todd. Mr. Mayor, we actually do have a second public comment. While they marked a non-agenda, we know that only agenda comments are allowed on this special workshop. However, they are speaking to active transportation, which is indirectly related to CIP. So, Mr. Audi, if you would like to go ahead and make your comment now, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Audi.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you so much for having me speak this morning. I am representing Bike Temecula Valley, which is an active transportation advocacy group coalition. I'm really pleased to follow the first speaker on speed limits, and it's something that we've commendated our city in the past, staff and council, for lowering speed limits in a consistent fashion, keeping those speed limits low to make our streets safe. So I am talking in general about reminders to the general plan, to the quality of life master plan, and just wanted to read a couple of things real quick off of general plan circulation element. The circulation element describes how Temecula residents and local employees get around using automobiles, public transit, and bicycles on sidewalks, trails, and current and future railways. The city has made substantial efforts in recent years to improve traffic conditions on local roadways and to encourage alternative means of travel. However, Temecula needs better roadway circulation between residential areas and commercial employment centers, and more efficient connections to regional transportation routes. So just amazing progress that we've made here. We've become a silver level bicycle town. I remember at the time Mayor Ron making the comment when we opened up the underpass on the Santa Gertrudis Trail that Temecula can be Southern California's bike town. So I really would love to see Temecula continue to be California's active transportation town, biking, walking, mobility devices. We just have some spectacular projects that we're completing and getting started on with the Murrieta Creek project, with the Santa Gertrudis Trail going all the way. We can take a trail all the way from Old Town to Wine Country now. Once that next segment is completed, we have the Temecula Loop Trail that we're focusing on. So just a lot of great projects. But what I'd like to do is just real quick, just keep in mind as you go through your planning, to keep in mind those core values from the Quality of Life Master Plan: healthy and livable community, economic prosperity, safe and prepared community, transportation, mobility, and connectivity, a sustainable city. I think that we've made progress with this, but there's so much more we can do to get our community connected for all levels and ages of cyclists, pedestrians, and mobility users. And just to keep those quality of life master plan concepts in mind as we're making these progress. This is just not about the bicycle community. This is about a healthy, active, safe community. So thank you so much for everything you've done and your time and effort in this next planning phase.
Thank you, Mr. Audi. Madam City Clerk, any more public comments?
No, Mr. Mayor, that concludes public comments.
All right, we will move on to our business item staff report, please.
Well, good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I wanted to just set some background on what brings us here this morning, as it was in May, just a few short months ago, when we had our annual budget and CIP workshop in this very room. And we committed at that time to return to a special CIP workshop later in the year and focus on a few key items. So it was at that workshop when the City Council reviewed, adjusted, and approved the fiscal year 2026 through 2030 capital improvement program. That council action set in motion our staff efforts, our planning efforts, and our funding accordingly. Of course, I want to remind you that the City Council does review CIP priorities annually every May, and next year will be no different when we present the CIP alongside the annual operating budget for any necessary adjustments. I would submit, though, that we have 5 goals of the CIP workshop this morning, which include affirming the current fiscal year 26-30 CIP priorities that were approved and adopted effective July 1, a cursory review and understanding of fully funded versus partially funded projects, and that is reflected in the handout that you have in front of you. We took the liberty of taking the entire CIP document and breaking it down into 4 very large sheets in a spreadsheet that's in front of you for easy reference and connection and nexus to the quality of life master plan. We also want to do a cursory review of future projects. That's often referred to as the back of the CIP, and those are unfunded, but they're designed to sort of keep on our radar, keep on the council's radar, keep on the community's radar, albeit they do not have any funding assigned to them. And then we'd like to confirm that the City Council updates and the tracking of high-profile community projects is what you want and what you need. And this is more of an internal goal that Ron and I have discussed over the last 30 days. Intuitively, we know what we believe the community is following very closely. Right now, there's a handful of projects that are near and dear to them. I'll put the hockey rink in that category. I'll put the skate park in that category. I'd put freeway projects in that category. And you know how we communicate internally. If that's satisfactory, or if there's other projects on this list that are important to you as a council member that you're not getting, you'd like monthly updates or bi-weekly updates, that's something we want to walk away today and do a better job of and make sure you get what you need in the way of updates. And then lastly, we want to get council direction on any non-included CIP projects. And so we'll get to that kind of later in the agenda. So for the purposes of a working agenda, you're getting your welcome, your overview from me. You'll get a Public Works and a CIP perspective from Mr. Moreno. You'll hand off to the current CIP budget status, which is Nino. And he has some slides he'll walk you through. And then we'll turn it back to Ron for CIP budget tools, future focus, direction. And then Ron and I and the entire CIP team, which is here, will be made available for a council conversation, answer any questions you have about any related capital projects or timing or things of that nature. And then we'll go from there. And then there's a handful of specific projects that I've heard from council members, either, in a workshop setting or maybe from the dais or just anecdotally. And I'm just going to rattle those off. They'll be on a slide later on. And I want to really just try to get some direction and consensus on where those belong, if anywhere. And then also there's a few projects that exceed my expenditure authority that I know that are right in front of you today for repairs. And so I'm just going to run through this list real quick. Eagle Soar splash pad repair. That obviously the council's up to speed on that. We'll go into that a little more detail later on. Mike Nagar tennis courts, whether to resurface and restripe those to full-time pickleball. Uptown Sports Park, it does have partial funding in the CIP. We do have a supply and demand issue with our ball fields. I believe that to be a very high priority for this city council, for our community. So we want to talk about that. Mercedes Street sidewalks, those have historically been viewed as a condition of private development. However, when development doesn't occur, there's a delay. Do we want to accelerate anything such as that, or do we want to wait for future development to take those on? A sheriff station was mentioned in May. Council Member Stewart, you brought that up in the budget workshop. I'm bringing it back today. Community garden, possible location at Santiago Lot. That is included in the QLMP. There is no project funding assigned to that. Councilman Stewart, you brought that up at the budget workshop. I'm bringing it back today. Emergency Operations Center, more of a standalone tech. Councilman Ron, you brought that up from the dais in a previous agenda item, as well as Fire Training Center. That does make its way into the QLMP. However, there is no current funding assigned to that. There is a regional project that is very early in the preliminary stages between MSJC, City of Marietta, and Police and Fire, and then Pechanga, I believe. And so we can speak more to that. So in front of you, again, as I mentioned, we've taken the liberty of boiling down the CIP in its entirety into those 4 pages. And I think it's fair to say that this morning you're going to hear how the CIP for our community remains robust and very aggressive. In that regard, we're very blessed and we're very fortunate. You will be reminded this is a 5-year planning document, and projects are often made up of very different colors of money with varied strings attached. There are grants involved, and sometimes there's timelines associated with that. You will also hear how we as the staff want to be focused on project delivery versus spreading resources too thin, often delaying the completions while price tags continue to escalate. We understand community priorities may change, council priorities may change, yet these check-ins like this morning provide us assurance that we're all working off on the same page. And while we can't do everything at once, we must prioritize available resources, and those include staff resources and getting things done timely. So at this time, I'd like to hand it over to our Public Works Director, Mr. Ron Moreno, to dive in deeper to our CIP presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. And so, Mayor Kalfas, City Council, I thought it would be best if we started off today with a quote directly out of the CIP book, because it kind of helps kind of lay the framework for what we are trying to accomplish in the Public Works Department. The mission of the Public Works Department is to provide quality services that support the infrastructure demands of the city of Temecula and enhance the safety, welfare, and aesthetic environment of the residents, businesses, and visitors. This is accomplished through the development and maintenance of city streets, sidewalks, traffic systems, bike lanes, parks, buildings, trails, and drainage facilities. Professional engineering oversight of public and private improvement projects, and implementation of erosion sediment controls and stormwater quality measures. So that's directly out of our book, and that is our mission statement, what we attempt to accomplish through all the projects in the city. With that, we have our Public Works team here, myself, my assistant, Avlin Adbiar. We have Nino Abad, who's heading up our CIP program. We also have various members of the Public Works Department that may be able to contribute with certain information with regards to parks and traffic. We also have the support of the other directors in the room. And then I just want to also mention, we do have our CIP staff in the back, and we appreciate all the support from all the departments and those that are here today, because in order to accomplish what we try to accomplish in Public Works, we couldn't do it without TCSD, without finance. And so we really appreciate their support as well. So as Aaron was mentioning, how do we assign projects? How do we do it? That's one of the things that I was really hoping for to come out of this CIP prioritization workshop, is really lending another aspect of being able to assign the appropriate projects to the right people. Normally we have a lot of metrics. What are people's strengths and weaknesses? What can they do? How can they deliver projects? But now we have another resource to us, and that's here today, you guys. I don't think we've done one of these before. Excuse me. So therefore, this will give us a way to operationally really improve within the department. So we appreciate this opportunity. Number 2, are we meeting the goals of the QLMP? I know that this city council spent a lot of time on the QLMP looking towards the future, and really collectively Public Works wants to make sure that we're attaining those goals that you guys have set out for us. And then third, it really goes to what our city manager mentioned, and which projects do we want to push forward ahead, not taking all the projects at once and making it very thin on our resources, but making sure we're prioritizing the very, very important ones at the top of the list that the city council wants us to push forward. So that's kind of the goals of the workshop today. And really, I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page with regards to our mission statement and how we want to push forward with our projects throughout the next few years within the city of Temecula. At this time, I can hand it over to Nino Abad. He's going to go through the very beginnings of a presentation to kind of break down our CIP program, and then we'll get some input from City Council.
Thanks, Ron. Good morning, Mayor and Council. This is a brief update on the current CIP budget status. The current CIP is a 5-year annual document approved by Council along with the annual operating budget every year. Again, it's a 5-year document, but it is updated every year. The last update was in May for the current fiscal year, which started in July and will end in June 30, 2026. The current CIP reflects the proactive steps taken by City Council, City Manager's Office, and Public Works Department to address a changing economic environment. 10 projects had funding reductions totaling about $4 million. 4 projects were moved to the future year, totaling about $41 million. That's the back of the CIP, which Aaron mentioned before. 5 projects were canceled, totaling about $13.5 million. And 32 projects requested additional funding, totaling about $45 million. About 19 million of which has an unspecified funding source. 48 projects remained unchanged. This reprioritization of project funding created available sources to fund the highest priority projects slated for fiscal year 25-26. So we have Fire Station 73. We anticipate that to go out to bid in October of this year, and that has about a 9-month construction duration. Fire Station 84 recently opened bids. We anticipate to award that contract at the next council meeting next week. That will do various renovations inside the existing fire station as well as the new training room. The skate park at Ronald Reagan Sports Park, that was authorized for bidding at the last council meeting, and we anticipate that to go out to bid on October 14. That has an approximate construction duration of 10 months. So we're hoping to have that completed by November of 2026. The hockey rink at Ronald Reagan Sports Park, right next door, that's currently under construction. It started in April, and we anticipate having that completed by the end of the year. The pavement rehab program, as you can see, was about $12 million over the last 2 fiscal years. The current project, which did paving on Rancho Way, Felix Valdez, and Santiago, is nearing completion. And the next anticipated pavement rehab project in the summer or spring or summer of 2026 will be Pava Road from Inez to Margarita. We have a sidewalk project that's going out to bid next month. We're trying to get that completed before we have the pavement rehab on that on that segment of Pava to follow shortly thereafter. And then the La Paz Roundabout reconstruction. Design just started. We anticipate to have that completed by March, and then go out to bid, and that has about a 7-month construction duration. This is a comparison of the last 5-year update to the current 5-year CIP. As you can see, the overall budget was reduced by about $31 million. The total funded remained about the same, but it's about $3 million less than the previous update. And then the total unspecified went down about $28 million. In total funding, and the total number of projects went from 110 to 98. In the CIP book, which you have in front of you, these are the general budget categories, including circulation, infrastructure, parks and rec, housing, and CFDs. The last 2 are not applicable to the current discussion, just so they have various strings attached and other restrictions. And as Aaron mentioned, we also have the Quality of Life Master Plan as another guiding document that we have. That was approved by Council in November of 2022. The QMP contains this timeline showing many of the goals the community wishes to accomplish by 2040, including various CIP and non-CIP projects. So those are the various projects in the QLMP that have already been completed. And these are the ones that are in progress. So you can see much of the QLMP is making good progress. With regards to current CIP projects in the QLMP, these are the ones that have been completed or are nearing completion. The Margarita Recreation Center was completed in 2023 and opened to the public in 2024. As stated, the hockey rink is currently under construction, hoping to complete that by the end of the year. And then Ronald Reagan Sports Park is about to go out to bid. and hopefully construction starts in January. Yanez Road widening Phase 1, we are working on right-of-way and design and environmental. We anticipate that to be completed, or to start construction in the summer of 2026. The Overland Bridge over Murrieta Creek, we hope to have that in construction sometime in 2027. The CRC renovations were completed in 2024. French Valley Phase 2 opened to the public earlier this year, along with the pickleball courts, which had the grand opening in February of this year. The back of the CIP, again, this is the list of projects that are technically in the CIP, but do not have current funding sources. They're not funded at this time. And then this is just a overview of a common CIP budget sheet. So the first two columns there are the allocations from prior fiscal years, with the first column being expenditures, the second column being any rollover funds available from prior allocations. The third column, which represents this fiscal year, would show any funding that was allocated for the current fiscal year. The fourth column is our projection for next year. And per our financial protocols, we consider that real money. It has to have an identified funding source for that year. And then the remaining 3 years, it may or may not have an identified funding source. Those are years where we can have unspecified funding sources. And this is the spreadsheet that we prepared for you today, which just kind of compresses 98 projects into 4 pages. It's color-coded. It shows grant, projects completing or nearing completion, defunded, and CFD projects. Basically, those projects have various funding sources, other restrictions, or we're just very far along on them, or it'd be more difficult to reprioritize those funds. And these are the projects listed that are not currently in the CIP. And I've identified which ones are on the QLMP, which is the Community Garden and the Fire Training Center. That concludes my portion of the presentation. And so I'll hand it back to Ron. Oh.
Question? Okay. So it shows here the Overland Bridge as a fully funded but grant funded facility. So are those grant funds, are they time sensitive? Because we know we're getting pushed out another 3 or 4 or 5 years, depending on how long the Murrieta Creek takes to get finished up. So that's my big concern when it says here it's fully funded and it's grant funded. That means, you know, for one, the project will cost 30% more now. So we won't be funded by the time we actually can build it. And so we're going to require additional funding. And so, but my main concern was, is that grant time sensitive?
So that's a grant. It's a federal grant administered by Caltrans, which is a highway bridge program. To keep that grant active, technically, we just have to show progress every 6 months. So there is time sensitivity to it, but there's not a definitive delivery date that's required for that grant. Fortunately on that one, I understand your concerns. When we go further in the fiscal years, it gets more expensive. Mm-hmm. Fortunately with that particular grant, it's not a fixed dollar. They pay a percentage, and we update those costs every single year as part of what we call the August-September bridge survey. Mm-hmm. And we update those costs every year, and then we anticipate when we'll do construction design right away and those things. So Caltrans is updated every single year regarding that grant fund and our status.
All right, thank you.
Mr. City Manager, that concludes our presentation for today. And so I'll hand it back to you to begin facilitating the discussion.
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, I'll hand it back to you and the council. We can do things a couple of different ways. We can start by, if the council members just have any general questions, we start there about CIP specific projects, or you wanted an update like Stu, you just got on a particular one in terms of timeline. Maybe we can try to field those questions right now before we roll up our sleeves. So why don't we start with that?
Perfect. Does anyone want to start off with any questions they have on the current CIP budget or projects?
I do have one more. So on that same project, so the Marietta Creek is, we just started the restoration for that process. So do we have a timeline when, well, and that's not going to go all the way up to Overland. So we've got to really wait for the next phase after that before we can begin construction on this bridge, correct?
So unfortunately, the scope of the Marietta Creek has changed a few times. We are trying to anticipate both conditions where we would have a fully widened creek underneath the bridge or the condition that it has now. We have it designed both ways, so we're trying to anticipate that. The current Marietta Creek Phase 2, that has a 3-year construction duration, and the rest of it is unfunded. So Army Corps has to give us the permit, so we are going to submit the permit based on the condition we have at that time.
We are tracking with flood control what their requests are from the federal government. So we are in close coordination. Nino's been meeting with them regularly. So we'll have a definitive answer about the direction we go here shortly. But as Nino mentioned, the good thing is we've anticipated both scenarios. We just have to see which one ends up going first.
And are there any, to the speaker's question about widening of Inez, that's not in a current CIP? I mean, that's in our long-range CIP, correct? It's not something that's imminent, not something that we're actually planning on, correct?
So that project has been on hold for quite some time. And what that's actually being deferred to is really the general plan update.
Right.
Because as part of the general plan update, there needs to be an updating of the circulation element. In the circulation element, it does show that as 4 lanes. So as that analysis goes through, and maybe Director Peters can talk more about this, but as that analysis goes through, then the models are going to show where traffic is going to go with the widening, without the widening. The reason it's in the CIP book is because it mirrors the circulation element currently. And of course, that's a city council decision based on the general plan update. So that would be something that we would take direction on later and remove it if it was to be removed, or keep it in if it's supposed to be kept in per the general plan update.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
Piggybacking on,
Turn your mic.
thank you. Piggybacking on Stu's, I guess, question there about Yanez improvements. As I'm seeing here on page 96, that it talks about improvements on curb, gutter, sidewalks, things like that. If the widening doesn't go through on that, is that something that the HOA still wants to see improvement on, or what is their stance on that? As far as, do they just want to leave it as is? What does that look like?
Well, we'd have to have further discussions with the HOA, because the HOA will be a stakeholder within the general plan update. They will be talked to and interviewed, to talk about that particular stretch of road. My initial conversations is that they want it to stay rural, is the desire of the HOA. However, that all has to be flushed out as part of the general plan update, and that would be more of something that council would have to make a decision on at a later date.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to speak to that as well, because, we see this in here, and it actually says Inez Road improvements. If you look at the project description, it talks about widening, curb, gutter, sidewalk, landscape medians, and the like. We've really focused on slowing speeds down in our city, and we've done a really good job. I know this has to go through the general plan update. I don't see a world where the circulation element tells us, hey, this needs to be 4 lanes, and then you have a council that's like, yeah, let's build that right through this community. I don't see a world where that happens. So I'd like to see it, obviously, it's going to stay in there. But instead of like the widening, you talk about improvements, right? And one way to slow down traffic is through friction, like this. And we do visible friction a lot, but you can also do physical friction. So you could build a trail next to it, right? Like you could build an equestrian trail next to it with like a white split rail fence. You narrow that section of road, speeds automatically come down. We're prioritizing, folks, hey, get on Temecula Parkway, and assuming, smart freeway project, aux lanes, everything is working properly. That's where we want people to be, right? We don't want people going through this neighborhood. So I think there's opportunities here, especially with the Jedediah Smith roundabout that's fully funded, with the La Paz roundabout that is going to be rebuilt. You have an opportunity from, Santiago to Jed Smith to really sort of like just double down and say, hey, this is what we want this part of the community to be. It's rural equestrian. Make it so it's easy to walk. So if you do live around there and you do want to bike, or you have a kid that wants to bike, you have a trail to bike on. It's separated from traffic. You're not, riding along Inez. So that's fine for some folks that want to do that. But I think long term, making these connections is key to really sort of doubling down what we've been doing on traffic circulation, as far as like slowing speeds down, making it safer for people to be out there. So, I think like as these things happen, as the general plan and circulation and everything comes about, I think we need to keep this in the back of our mind. It's like, well, what community do we want to live in? And let's build that community. And if that means, like a really nice trail system that goes through this part of town and the community and connects to others, like Rosehaven Heritage Garden is right there, and there's some really cool streets that you can bike and walk through there. And so getting folks, through this section, I think is highly important. And like I said, with the 2 roundabouts, and I think this is like ripe, good opportunity to build something really solid in this part of the community. So, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And I just have one question. For future projects, we have the acquisition of Fire Station 12. Can we just confirm that the state's budget has removed Fire Station 12 moving to a new station off DePortola in their current 5-year projection?
Chief, can you confirm that? The last report that I received was any sort of relocation from Station 12 to a future station in Wine Country was probably well beyond our 5-year projections. And just to remind the council, remember we took the Fire Station 12 replacement thing, put it towards the debt pay down strategy, and then made a commitment to come back and pay ourselves back for that future thing. So Chief, can you confirm that the state is working at the speed the state works at?
Sure. I think last week, actually, we got some news. What they're holding on to is they want to build Lake Elsinore Station 10 and Station 12 at the same time. But they hadn't been able to find any land in Lake Elsinore or anything in that region to get both those projects going. It sounds like maybe they have a deal somewhere in Lake Elsinore with some land to build Station 10, so 12 is back on the table again. But yeah, I think we're still a ways out before both of those projects get started and the engine moves and they vacate downtown station. So I think we have some time. I'll check back in with DGS and those folks to see what the timeline is and if there's any update on that.
Thank you very much, Chief. And City Manager, can you remind us, did we take out all of the $5+ million in our Fire Station 12 acquisition fund to do the debt repay down strategy?
I believe the answer to that is yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I do have one more. So the parklets in Old Town, what's the status of those? I don't see them on the CIP, but I thought we did approve those projects to go, and I haven't seen or heard anything about them since.
As far as the parklets go, we've been working on a design for those.
Uh-huh.
And that's something we can bring to the Old Town Steering Committee and the Old Town Local Advisory Committee, bring those back. But we have a standard design that can be used in different locations throughout Old Town.
Yeah, because I do notice there's there's probably 6 or so parking spaces that have fire hydrants that are designated no parking. And almost every weekend I'm driving, there's a car parked there. And they almost always get tickets too, by the way. But nonetheless, those parklets would prevent anybody from actually parking in those spots that are designated for fire hydrants. And so, thank you.
Just to confirm it is indeed in the CIP.
Where is it at?
Page 141.
Oh, it's not on the short sheet though, right?
It is. It's listed as it's called the Old Town Temecula Parklets Program. On page 3, halfway down.
I see it now. Yeah. Okay. All right, good.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to the next.
Okay, so questions answered. I'm going easiest to hardest here. All right. So, how about one other question for the council? How are we doing in terms of notifications to the council and to the community on active projects? Ron and Nino mentioned many of those. Are we doing okay? Do you want to see? Are there things that we're not spotlighting? Are there things that you, as a council member, your district, you need more information for? I'd love to hear from all 5 of you if we're nailing this or if there's room for improvement, and get that direction today. That's one of our goals.
All right, who likes to start that one off for us? All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right. No, I feel like we're doing a great job. I'm not getting anything from the community, anything extra, than our normal emails or information needed. I think honestly, we're doing a great job. The social media aspect to it, I think, is really helpful. I think that's really being able to help out the community to making an impact and letting them know when things are going on and projects. So I feel very comfortable where we're at for right now.
Councilmember Schwenk?
Yes, so I would agree. I think, as far as communication to council, I think it's solid. We all stay engaged in the projects we want to stay engaged in, right? So you probably intuitively know, where we're all at and, where to check in and things like that. I think, we do a really good job when a project is happening as far as messaging to the community. A lot of the stuff we do in public works and the sort of videos that we make, especially with French Valley and, the RCTC project, that's happening. And I think that's great. I'd like us to really consider sort of and I'll use Inez Road, the improvements as an example. So Inez Road from Rancho Cal to Rancho Vista, that project is something we're working on right now. The community doesn't really know, right? Unless you're, sort of really tied into what's happening. I did a series of videos on it, just on my personal social media, and the response was, kind of what you would expect. But I think when we have these projects that are going forward, we could be really proactive in communicating to the community, using social media or newsletter and things like that, versus, the way that it happens now is it's just, the project's sitting there, people see, apartment homes being built, and they're like, the city's not building, they're not widening, what's happening? I'll use the Nicholas Road extension as another example where I think we could sort of recapture the narrative, so to speak, in some ways of messaging hey, this is what's going on. This is why you're seeing culverts piled on the side of the road for 6 months. Let's just be honest with the community and just tell them this is what's happening. So I think there's opportunities there. But as far as communication to council, I think we're doing a great job.
Councilmember Ron?
Yeah, just real quick on that. One of the things I was thinking of because we had talked about this a little bit last week was and to Zach's point, for a lot of the projects that are moving, but people just simply aren't aware of, or, just not tracking until you see, a piece of heavy equipment or something out there and everybody's like, what's going on? It would be a potential solution. I saw this in one other community where they just have a big QR code where, folks sitting in traffic or driving past the thing or in their neighborhood can kind of, oh, what's going on at the park, flash a quick, code and it takes you to the project, quick project summary or a social media post or whatever. So just so people can kind of figure it out. I thought that was a great tool and kind of an easy thing for us to be able to just kind of print out and put out there.
Oftentimes we put a project sign up,
Yeah.
but you're saying the QR code could just take it to maybe more of the details of the timeline of that, right?
Yeah, because I'm usually in the wrong lane to read the sign, right? I mean, I'd
We're not
imagine everybody
condoning
else is.
using
Yeah.
your phone and driving at the same time, just to be
Well,
clear.
yeah. I mean, passenger will take care of it for me. But yeah, something that makes
It's a
it
good
easier
thought.
for folks to, especially when it just pops up in the neighborhoods. Yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember Stu?
Yeah, I think communication with the council has been totally fine. I do think though we do need more of a forward-facing presence to the public, especially when it comes to roads, because that's the one thing I keep getting. People keep tapping me. It's like, oh, the roads are terrible in Temecula. It's like, oh, they're not, and of course everybody micro everything's. I mean, it's like right in front of their house, it's bad. And therefore all the streets in Temecula is bad. So, but I think if we had more of a social media presence of what we're doing, I mean, we have in the CIP, we're doing $14 million worth of road repairs, and public doesn't see that or hear that or know that. And so I think, I mean, and to Zach's point, I did a reel on those giant culverts that were piled up and as they were being put in place. And last I checked, it was over 50,000 people viewed that Nicholas Road extension on the culvert. So people are dying to know what's happening in our city. And I've had many people come up to me, so glad you do this reels and Zach's done the reels and, Brendan's done the reels. And that really connects the city to the public. And I think that's what we really need to start concentrating on, is that connection of what we're doing and how it affects them. And the public's just dying to hear it too. I mean, every time they see something, they're like, oh, I didn't know that was happening. Oh, I didn't know, And even when a dollar amount is attached to it, it's even more impactful. I mean, the fact that we spent $3.2 million so people could play pickleball, that says something. It says, and, $11 million for a new roller rink and skate park. I mean, we're spending a lot of money for their purposes, for their enjoyment. So, and I think that message needs to be said often and more often. And so, yeah, we've got a great social media team that can make these things super easy. They do an amazing job. So I think we need to start using the heck out of them. So
I agree with all my colleagues. I think the QR code is awesome. Those signs when it says your tax dollars at work, something like that, but specifically for the city where it has that QR code. And like Ron said, you just scan it and it goes directly to that project, whether it's a social media link or a description of the project and the money allocated for that project. I think that would be huge, especially this day and age with social media. But I think as far as communication to the council, like my colleague said, I think you are doing a great job. I think it's difficult this day and age with social media. You can post as much as possible, and I think we should post as much as possible, and our team does a great job of that. But you're only going to reach a certain amount of the population. A lot of the population won't even see it. And there's always, with all the different groups on social media now, that there's a lot of false information. So it just takes a proactive council, a proactive city staff being engaged in those different groups. I know we're all in our own HOA groups. So I think it just takes us individually and as a staff as a whole, trying to be as proactive as possible and getting that communication out there. But this day and age, there's always going to be false information out there. There's always going to be a lack of people understanding what's going on. And ultimately, a lot of them may not even be engaged in local politics, and they just see, a construction project going on, but they're not even in the HOA group, so they're not on the different social media sites. But I think as far as from our standpoint, we do a great job communicating out. We can always do more, like we always say. But overall, I think we're doing a good job. And I think the idea of the QR code and being more proactive on social media in regards to CIP projects and infrastructure projects would be beneficial to the community.
No, that's helpful. That's exactly what I think we were looking for. And I know there is room for improvement, and we're committed to doing things differently and in a different way. And there's capacity to sort of try to educate as many people as we can. And I think, Mayor, you nailed it. You and I were at your first coffee with the mayor, and I think that's one of the things I walked away from was no matter how hard we work at communicating with our community, 110,000 folks, there is a huge segment of folks that are just busy with life and they don't know. And so we found ourselves sort of, right, like retelling the stories and stuff too. Stu, to your earlier point, you reminded me Nicholas Road, developer built project versus a city driven project. I know folks could probably care less, but that means something, right? In terms of management and oversight and delays and heat and everything else. And so that can also be part of the narrative as we're pushing things out, that we're making it distinctively clear our role and where our authority starts and where our authority stops too. So I do like that. And Nicholas Road was, of course, developer driven. So.
Yeah, and so that makes me start to think as well, because I know we have the monthly status reports. Our CIP group keeps them up to date. They go in the agenda, but I'm hearing that might not be the best way that people are hearing about our projects, is through an agenda report, through city council. And so it has to be a combination of a couple of things. And so we'll strategize on ways we can be more outward facing, more proactive in the project updates, and maybe they're not going to be just on agenda reports on a city council meeting. So we're taking those notes, we'll take it down, and we'll look for a different way to allow you guys to promote things as well. Because they are in there, the updates are there, but how many people look at those?
And if I might add, from the public information side, we can and will do more to outreach to the community related to our CIP projects. They're very important to the community.
Thank you very much, Betsy. Mayor Pro Tem?
Quick question. Ron, between you and Mayor Kalfas, one of the things that I just kind of thought about is obviously the HOAs have a lot of connection individually within their community. Are we sending out newsletters directly or contacts or emails directly to the HOA presidents throughout the city? Or is that something maybe we can work on a little bit more to get that information? Because I know they even send out their newsletter going out as well. So I don't know if that's something that would be, another way to be proactive in getting that information out there.
Yeah, the HOAs, not HOAs, are the same. Some are very, very active, and others not so active. Los Ranchitos, very active. Red Hawk's active. Some of the other ones are not. But I hear what you're saying, that maybe we need to have more of a concerted effort, because a lot of the updates we do give is word of mouth. So secretary will call me, or property manager will call. We'll give them some updates, and then they advertise that. But that, relying on the phone calls, maybe we need a more organized, concerted effort to contact the HOAs. But they are very, very different, all of them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just another way to possibly just
Yeah.
branch out more and get more people involved.
No, it's a good thought. And you reminded me too, in addition to the day-to-day social media that we're messaging all month long, once a month, my office puts together a city manager newsletter, that goes out. And it's going out, Betsy, I think to about 50,000 addresses every month. And so that's a great vehicle that we could put links, Ron, to capital projects in my newsletter, and so make it super simple on people. And if they want to get more detail, they can just click on that link and take them to somewhere else. And if they don't care, then they delete it, right? But those would be sort of easy things that we're already doing that we could make it. If you want more information, here's an easy way to go get it too. So, yeah,
Perfect.
okay, Ron. I don't want to leave that topic until you feel like you've.
I think we have enough to go by
Okay.
to begin kind of thinking about it in Public Works, of how we're going to kind of reorganize how we're messaging the council on our projects.
Perfect. No, appreciate the council's feedback. We heard you loud and clear, and we'll get to work on those areas that we did. Okay, so Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, should I just continue?
Absolutely.
Okay. This list that's in front of you, as I mentioned on the front end, kind of represents a combination of things that I know that are important to individual council members. In some cases, they're in the CIP. There's a lot of strings attached. There's a lot of property complications, or in one case, it flat out broke. And so let's start with the first one, because I think it's kind of the lowest hanging fruit on this page, is the Eagle Soar Splash Pad Playground. Of course, we all know this has got to be one of the most popular amenities the city has designed and built. It's located at Mike Nagar Community Park. It's designed and engineered for families with special needs. We have a lot of programming that goes there with TCSD. Now that we have the MRC next door, it's just an amazing, popular amenity. Ron, do you want to just talk briefly about kind of what's happened there, why it's no longer in service, and what we see as potential repairs that could include both underground or possibly above ground repairs in this ballpark of $300,000.
Yeah, there's been a lot of history on that particular amenity, which aquatic amenities themselves come with inherent maintenance costs that are associated with it to keep it going. I think I'll turn it over to Stacy in a little bit to talk about more of the technical, if that's what you wish. But really, what's happened is it's endured a major failure at this point. A line that has not only ruptured, but also it has undermined, and the tank itself is leaking, and so the tank needs to be replaced. There's different options that we've looked at of how to do that. As City Manager mentioned, there could be some different things that we do there to make the maintenance, palatable for the next few years. Think about it like not just now, but into the future. What portions of it do we need to switch out? Is there an opportunity to redesign it for it to be more, maintenance free as time goes on? So those are the things that we're looking at. However, it is in a state that really needs a major investment. As you can see there, $300,000, a major investment to get it back to working condition. And this will take the duration of the winter time, trying to get it ready for spring of next year. Stacy, did I leave anything out?
You covered it all.
Yeah, so if you have any more technical questions, that's what we're looking at right now. But we've kind of got those ballpark estimates, but we haven't put anything out for an actual quote and getting things going because we were waiting for direction from the council.
Councilmember Ron?
Do you have a estimate from sort of inception to today, all the repairs? I mean, just back of the envelope, how much has this thing cost the city since it began?
Yeah, it's been a kind of a maintenance challenge, as most splash pads are. We've put in quite a few dollars into it to keep it going. This would be, we did a phase 1 project where we updated the UV system on it to make it compliant a couple of years ago, which was around $100,000, and then we went and replaced all the deck features on the splash pad deck itself. That was like another $30,000, and then now this big catastrophic failure, and not including all the just ongoing annual maintenance on that, just to keep it operational, staff time, chemicals, minor repairs and replacements of different components of it. So,
Councilmember Stu?
What was the actual capital cost to build this?
Remember the total? I don't have that number in front of me.
I'm going to
Ballpark it for me. Yeah.
ballpark, please don't hold it.
Yeah.
But we can look it up while we're in here, but it probably was somewhere in I'm going to venture to guess it was in the 2.5 range.
Right. So that's my point. A $300,000 repair cost is worth it for something we've already invested probably closer to $2 million in already. And it is the most, and I dare say even more than the swimming pool at Ronald Reagan Sports Park. I get more people complaining that is closed than any other city asset, other than pickleball. If we closed that, that would be another nightmare scenario. But this splash pad is used by so many people, and especially in the special needs community. So it's like, yeah, we have to fix this. And I think a redesign is what we should do. We should really look at how can we redesign it to where if we have to make repairs, it's going to be easier, cheaper, and faster. That's what I think.
Ron?
Well, I don't want to be the Grinch here when it comes to this kind of stuff, but I usually am. So bear with me here for a moment. But $378,000, I think, is in an unfunded CIP right now to continue and complete the Community Wildfire Protection Plan for the city of Temecula. Kind of an important thing for us to get under our belt, call it done, and manage. And then we're talking about, we could just throw another $300,000 at a $2 million asset. I've said from the very beginning when I got on council, if we can't get public safety right, we have no business doing anything else. And so people may complain that says, the splash pad is down and that's a horrible thing. Well, you know what's worse than that? I hate to highlight that, but if we're going to start prioritizing things, and put additional stuff on the burden of the CIP and start shifting money around, I'm sorry to say, I wouldn't support this until we had an agreement on the council to actually get some of the most fundamental pieces of public safety accomplished. And if and when we do that, then we can move forward and do all the fun stuff. But if we're not doing the basic pieces for our community right now, I just can't support that.
I have a maybe a solution there, because this is one of the lower cost sort of repairs. The park restroom renovation, expansion, and ADA improvement project listed in the CIP has an available balance that we could transfer from there to this particular project for those repairs, and not affect any of the other existing priorities or CIP projects if the council was amenable to that. Another option that's available is we could take funding from the vacant parcel cleanup and beautification, or a Temecula Creek fencing project. Both of those line items in the CIP were previously, approved by this council, but they potentially could, help with the repair of this project if that's the desire of the council.
So, Mr. City Manager, were you saying that it may be possible to do both the Eagle Soar splash pad and the update that Ron spoke about? For the
Yeah,
fire plant?
his project is funded, and we are going to begin work. And if we need to get an update on that, but that was the direction you gave us at the budget workshop. So that project should be included in here to do that firework. We're not advocating for defunding that.
But it's not. I thought that was listed under the grant, however, right? So it's fully funded through what?
The general fund, you made a direction, Jennifer, $250,000 of general fund.
Well, that was just for the maintenance piece, not for the planning piece. So the 250 was to provide for maintenance of existing high-risk areas within the city, but recognizing that we still had to finish the rest of the CWPP to identify the continuing priorities and establish sort of an annual plan. So that's the piece that still hasn't been funded. And I think the thing is we're waiting for grants. And at the budget, I had said some of these things, especially I think we lose 15 points on the CAL FIRE. Correct me if I'm wrong, but something, because we're not a disadvantaged community, right? So you lose 15 points right off the bat. And so it's going to be difficult for us to ever get that thing grant funded. And so I don't want to sit here for, 18, 24 months while we run through a couple of grant cycles saying, are we going to get any support for this when we're probably not. Betsy, I know we had just put in, for that. So I don't mind waiting, but and if we get it, fantastic. But as a contingency, if we don't, I don't want to have to wait another 18 months to go through another grant cycle to see that we haven't accomplished this. Again, I don't mean to be the Grinch here on this stuff, but, I feel like this is something that probably should take a higher priority.
And what's the timeline for when we will know if we were granted that grant?
Probably in the fall, but the grant application actually is for citywide plan, not the actual removal of the debris.
Yeah, and that's what I'm asking for, is that's on the CIP, but it's listed as just grant. And so if we're able to accelerate that through, shifting of resources, that would be my priority here.
What is if we find out down the road that we're unsuccessful in this first round of grant, what is the amount that you envision that we're chasing, or that we feel like we need to consider?
It's just under $400,000, right? 378 or so was a little bit higher than that, maybe.
We asked for 950 on this grant
950.
because that includes EIR as well, well as the plan.
Okay. That we don't get an exemption under CEQA on this one.
I'll defer to the director.
There are some emergency exemptions, but I think to be safe, we'd want to complete that EIR. So the planning effort's probably about $500,000, and then the EIR's around the same.
Okay.
So 950 is what we asked for.
Councilman Ron, is it is it fair for us to keep this top of mind until we're back in here in May when we'll know the status of the grant application, or would you want to see something today as a contingency related to that?
No, I'd like to see something today as a contingency because, you know, if by fall we don't hit a trigger on, you know, funding, waiting till May to make a decision and then, you know, shifting funds and all that, it's adding just another year and another year. And, you know, we had talked about this after we finished the South Side plan in 22, saying we need to continue with the rest of the city. And it's been 4 years. And I don't want to see us sit on it any longer. Yeah.
Okay, so for purposes of today, I'm hearing you. I'm gonna put this at the top of your list for immediate sources of funding, either through available funds and or potentially taking from other CIP projects to the tune of $950,000. Okay, I'll just kind of table that right now.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay, so question, I know I'm gonna bleed into the next item here, but what I'm hearing from Councilmember Ron is the fact that yes, we want to build up some type of fund towards that. If I'm looking at the importance between Eagle Soar Splash Park and maybe even the pickleball at Mike Nagar Park for the tennis courts, is that the right one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My opinion, if we were going to pull from something, I would rather see us complete the splash pad and pause on the restriping at 200,000. That gets us a lot closer, but at the same time, as Councilmember Stewart had said, is the fact that it is an important part for our community. It's already done. Stu, I love your idea of being able to navigate, being able to access the plumbing and all that stuff a little easier. That might have to do that later on. But in order to be able to kind of strike that balance, I think that might be the area to pull from in order to make sure that our families are taken care of, because we all know Eagle Soar Splash Pad, when you're down there, myself and my colleagues have been down there, that place is packed. My kids have been there when they were little. That place never runs dry, literally, with kids. So that would be my recommendation.
Councilmember Schwenk?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So I'll just sort of stick with, looking at the Eagle Soar Splash Pad. I think, if we were talking about building another splash pad, adding to the inventory of splash pads, I don't know where I'd be on this. As far as repairing something that's already built, I think we have an obligation to the community to repair it. We know a lot more now about splash pads than we ever did. Unfortunately, they're very difficult to maintain, especially for a public agency to maintain. I think it's extremely difficult. Some HOAs have some small ones, and who knows how safe those are. But I think we have an obligation. To Councilmember Stewart's point about is there some design options that we could make it easier? Maybe that's something we can explore. And I spent some time out there looking at the actual tank that's broke, and holy cow, what a mess. It's a big deal. And again, that kind of this will go back to my messaging side of things. We were very sort of we sort of danced around what was going on. And a lot of people felt like, oh, you're closing the splash pad. Why are you closing the splash pad? No, again, let's just be honest. Hey, look, there's a hole in the bottom. This tank broke. We need to fix it. It's going to be, expensive. Let's figure that out. Going to where do we pull funds from? Unfortunately, this is how all this works. I think, Mr. City Manager, I think you had the best idea with the Temecula Creek fencing project. There's $318,000 in that CIP project. Not a huge fan of fencing. In fact, I'm working to remove some fencing around some of the creeks where some of the trails as well. So let's not just look at this. Let's give our city manager and the finance team the keys to this and say, hey, if this is a priority, for Councilmember Ron and the balance of the council, let's let the city manager's office and the finance team figure it out. That's what they've been doing professionally as long as I've been here, and they've done a really good job. They know what the community wants. Especially once this next community survey comes out, we'll have a greater understanding. I think it would be really bad to not repair the splash pad. And then quite honestly, like the conversion of the pickleball courts, sure, we could leave the one tennis court. I spent quite a bit of time out there at the dog park over the summer and would just sort of like organically talk with people that were playing out there. It was getting a ton of use and from people that maybe didn't like the big complex because they're not competitive. Also, that complex is full. So if you are a novice, the novice courts are taken over by like more experienced people. It was parents that wanted to play with their children that were just like trying to be active. I think converting that to full pickleball would be great. So I wouldn't want to see us pull that away. We also know that, elementary schools are now doing pickleball as like a PE unit. And so there is an elementary school there that there could potentially be some joint use agreement with that. So they're able to use the pickleball courts as well. So again, I'm in support of repairing the splash pad. I'm also in support of doing that full conversion, but giving the city manager and his team the tools that they need to find the available funds if in fact we're all on board with moving money around to the wildfire protection plan.
For me, this is a tough one. I just have a few questions. For the $300,000, that is just for the immediate repair, not for a design in its totality. Would that be fair to say? This is more of a Band-Aid, but the overarching maintenance and ongoing issues would require much more funding and investment.
No, this would get it back up and running, and we would have our annual operating costs. I was able to get this from TCSD, the memo we put together regarding it all. So to your question, it was during construction a $1.3 million project, but then there was the UV system that Stacy mentioned. There was also some other pumps that had to be replaced, and then annual operating costs are $80,000 a year, and that includes chemicals, it includes the various maintenance, staffing, everything else. So overall, I'd say the estimate city manager gave is pretty accurate between a $2 and $3 million amenity. But this repair would just be to get it going, and in its entirety, it would not be a Band-Aid repair. But there would be the annual operating costs going forward after that.
I think, Ron, one of the things we discussed is if we've learned anything is that failure underground complicates everything, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we're going to go to the trouble of repairing, not a Band-Aid, but full replacement, new tank repair, does it make sense to sort of find a place in the park footprint where this is above ground? Maybe it's not the prettiest thing to look at, but we can figure out some landscaping and some shielding and stuff. But having to access that regularly might make more sense to consider a solution as an above ground new equipment. Just right?
Yeah, and if that's the desire of the council, we would certainly bring back some options to the council that we could do.
And if we approve the repair today, what would you say the timeline is for getting the Eagle Solar splash pad reopened?
Reopened, we're shooting for spring next year.
And is there any way, because the most important time for the splash pad would be summer, right?
Yeah.
That's when most people use it. If we delayed the repair, is there a way to move the finances around where we can finish the CWPP and get the Eagle Soar open by summertime?
I think what I'm hearing is if the council sounds like you guys are supportive of the CWPP, I don't think we'll finish it. I don't think that's your goal. I think his goal is to basically seed fund or fully fund that particular element of the CWPP to the tune of $950. Now let's just say that's the direction you give us today. We will go find that through a variety of sources. We would put together a new project sheet, bring it back to the full council for adoption. We wouldn't wait till May. We'd come back in, later this month or next. You guys would approve it. You'd understand where we took the money from, and it would become part of the CIP thereafter. And that, I think, would accomplish what you're looking for. Meanwhile, on a separate track, we get direction to do the same, albeit at a lower amount, $300K. We'll find that money. I mentioned a few sources that we could probably pull from without upending too much out there. And Ron, you'd put together you'd go out to bid, or you'd have a bid package or design specs. And our goal for the kiddos would be spring.
That's our
Right?
goal.
So we could put these on separate tracks, but the funding would be in place for the CWPP.
Can I ask, Mr. Peters, does the CEQA have to be aligned with the plan itself? Because there's a lot of elements to the plan that are non-sort of CEQA related. And then the implementation side on the land management piece is the CEQA trigger, right? Mm-hmm. So do they have to be aligned, or can we do one and then phase the second in? And I'm just thinking maybe splitting between fiscal years,
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, the potential's there to do the CWPP and then the following year do the EIR, but then there's that lag. If there's something we want to take care of,
Right.
the EIR is not done.
Yeah, and I think we're okay with that, because I think, based on our conversations around town, the south side is already covered.
Right.
And that was kind of the priority, so we can continue focusing on that in the interim and then phasing in. I think that could work. It gives a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, and the south side's covered by the emergency exemptions at this time. If those weren't there, we would need the EIR.
Okay, Mr. City Manager, I think there is consensus on the Eagle Soar splash pad repair at the tune of $300,000. And it sounds like in a few weeks, if not a month, you'll come back to the council for Councilmember Ron's item with the CWPP. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, actually, both those items probably will come back. Any deviation from the current CIP that's beyond my authority is going to come back before the council. So we will repackage both those. And just on both those items, I think potentially park restroom renovation, ADA, I'm looking at that line item. I'm looking at Temecula Creek fencing. I'm looking at the vacant parcel cleanup beautification line item. I'm not touching the Old Town Parklets program because I heard Stu, I heard you. But between those, potentially we can cobble together what we need to, and then we can put together the project sheets for moving those two things forward. So
Perfect.
I got the direction I needed on both those.
Perfect. And luckily for us, we started out at the 100,000s. We're going to get pretty soon here to the tens of 80 million.
That's why I organized it this way.
Perfect. So we'll move on to the convert to full pickleball.
Yeah, let's have a brief conversation about that. Ron, you or Erica, do you want to just give a real quick, brief update? There was a narrative before we built the 17-court pickleball complex. Then maybe that's changed. You're hearing different things. You want to just speak to that a little bit now and what's kind of up for consideration?
Sure. So when the new pickleball complex was built, the original thought process was that we would take the courts at Nagar and convert them back to tennis. Our assumption was that the new pickleball court with 17 courts would be more than enough to kind of absorb all of the community demand for pickleball. Since that's opened, the feedback from staff has been that that's not actually the case. There's demand that actually exceeds those 17 courts. So what we're seeing is that we're not really seeing a lot of tennis activity at the Nagar courts anymore. We're seeing an overflow of pickleball activity. Typically people who, as Councilmember Schwenk mentioned, maybe aren't playing as competitively, or it's just parents and kids and they just want a less crowded, less pressure environment for playing pickleball. So that's why our recommendation as staff was to convert the pickleball courts, or the courts at back to being fully pickleball. And then our tennis courts would be the ones we have currently at the joint use courts, which are Great Oak and Temecula Valley High School. And then we also have tennis at Friendship Park. The other consideration in all of this is that what we're finding is that pickleball and tennis don't mix. I think the initial thought when we first rolled out pickleball and us being a relatively new community to pickleball was that these two groups would sort it out amongst themselves. And what we see is just the style of play, the people who are playing, the fact that pickleball is much more social, has much larger groups involved. Tennis tends to be, just 2 to 4 people at a time, results in some friction between the groups. So the idea of sort of having a hybrid facility just isn't as practical as we initially thought it would be.
Thank you, Erica. So, options available. We could do nothing today. We could status quo. If you wanted us to resurface, I understand there's some additional costs for that, as well as full conversion. Looks like to the tune of about $200K. We would go through the same exercise where we would pull from other low priority projects that are partially funded to make this a priority, if it is indeed a priority today, or if it's anything the council wants to revisit at a later date. So just looking for direction on that.
Councilmember Stu, you want to start us off on that one?
I'm kind of on the fence on this because I could go either way. So explain to me the resurface repair and maintenance. Why are we spending $150,000 for that? What's that about?
Stacy?
It's a little more than just resurfacing. We actually need to replace the surface. It is a 30-year-old court. It has some large cracks on it. So part of it is to actually replace the asphalt base to it and then recoat it and line it to pickleball, and including 4 more permanent nets on the existing tennis court side.
And I will add that we have had complaints from the public on that. There's been some My Civic app complaints on the cracks and kind of how it affects play and tripping hazards.
Yeah, it's a safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I would support it then, just for one thing, just to correct, defects in the facility itself. But yeah, I'd be in support of it.
Councilmember Ron?
I mean, no. I just don't see it as that high of a priority. I mean, I appreciate all the effort the city goes to putting in, like the bike trails and all of that. And, I do remember that quote about, it could be a Bike City USA for Southern California, right? Were you attempting to be Bike City USA and then Pickleball City USA? And, we've got a lot. We have a lot of resources. I think, adding more is a great concept, but right now with other priorities, I just don't support this.
MPT?
All right. Thank you, Mayor. So I like pickleball. I have never played yet, but don't think I don't like pickleball. But I think we need to go forward on this because, again, going back to the word safety, we're already finding complaints. And to look at a possible lawsuit down the line would either mean we'd have to completely shut down that area, the pickleball area, so we don't get sued. God forbid somebody trips, sprains an ankle. So I just say, just for safety purposes for our residents and also just to get it up and running again, I would say go ahead and fund it since we found other areas for funding for the fire, what is it?
CWPP?
CWPP. So that's my thing.
Councilmember Schwank?
Yes, thank you. So I'm in support of this for a couple of reasons. Like I said, I'm out there talking with folks, and it is valued, right? And so we could leave it, but if you go out there and you actually look around, you have half a complex that's not even being used at all. It's just not being used by the tennis community. It's not even being, every once in a while I see someone set up the temp stuff, but I think the $200,000 for the full renovation, which is needed anyways. I've been out, you're right, Stacy, that it needs, it's you said it's 30 years old. I believe you. It definitely looks like it. So I'm solid there. And then just as I look down the list, I'm about to save the city about $140 million in the next few minutes. So I'm okay with spending a couple $100,000.
For me with this one, I haven't done my own due diligence and reached out to the tennis community. I would say I am a part of the pickleball community, and I understand that there is no hybrid between the two. You cannot coexist between pickleball and tennis. And I haven't seen, those tennis courts used to be packed over at Mike Nagar Community Park. So it'd be interested to see why the tennis community doesn't go there, if there's more than enough tennis courts in our city with our joint use agreements. But I really haven't reached out to the tennis community and seen the reason for them not participating at the Mike Nagar Park anymore. So I don't know if I'm for a full conversion to pickleball. I think enough never is when it comes to parks for any sport, whether it's soccer parks, baseball fields, pickleball courts, enough never is. Tennis courts. I think each community could make the argument that we don't have enough of this field or that type of pickleball court or that type of tennis court. So I'm okay tabling this, but it sounds like there is support in favor of converting and repairing.
Okay. Yeah, I did hear three of you suggest that we try to move forward with this. So we will put together a project sheet, then have to bring that back to the full city council, and we will do so. All right. The next item, Uptown Temecula Sports Park. So just to familiarize everyone with what we're talking about here, this is the detention basin behind Felipe's on Jefferson, located in our Uptown specific plan or our sports district area. This is property that we do not own. However, it has been envisioned for over 20 years that at some point the city would enjoy recreational facilities inside the basin there. As was mentioned earlier, we obviously have a supply and demand issue with, even though we have an amazing amount of fields and sports parks, we are still short. And we also, there is a real thing called sports tourism, where folks will travel, they will stay in hotels. There is an economic impact that comes back if you do some of these recreational projects right, in terms of a return on investment. We believe, as the staff, I've talked to enough of you, I think you all put this project in a very high priority. There's a couple $1 million that's sitting in this line item today, obviously far short of where it needs to be fully funded. There's a lot of moving parts on this, and I'd like Ron to just kind of walk the council briefly through, you know, the Riverside County flood, the Army Corps, the vision, what we're attempting to do. And I think we're at a place now as a city where if this truly is something that we want to see in our lifetime or sooner, we need to begin some very aggressive conversations with the county and county flood for permissions and things of that nature. So, and I know those are also in the works, and I'm encouraged by what I've heard, but we have a ways to go because we don't control our destiny when it comes to the property. So Ron, do you mind?
Sure. So as you guys recall, phase one, was through Old Town, and you see the walls out there. The channel was dredged out. It was flown, remapped, contoured. It was sent off to FEMA, and just recently FEMA contacted us and said, yes, it's been remapped. So essentially there's 211 parcels in Old Town that no longer need flood insurance because of that phase 1A. Now, what's happened since then is flood control was working on phase 2, which was supposed to go from, and they call it 2B, it's supposed to go from Rancho California Road all the way up to past Winchester, getting close to what is known as the detention basin, and the detention basin being part of an additional phase later. But this would take all of the industrial properties that you see off Murrieta Creek, those Diaz properties out of the floodway at that time. However, when they went out to bid and flood control received the monies that they did, the funds from the federal government, it turns out after they bid it that it wasn't enough to get all the way to Winchester. They could only get halfway there. And so rather than redesign or rather than going back and asking for more funds, flood control made the decision to chop the project in half, only go to Montezuma. As you noted, Councilmember Stewart, that affected the Overland Bridge, the Diaz widening. There was a lot of things that affected. So Nino's been working on that portion of it. The project was scaled back to 2B, but they still wanted to utilize the detention basin area. So what we're going to call right off Jefferson between Cherry and Felipe's restaurant. So right across from the apartments that were just built. All that area was going to be utilized as a staging area and also to be able to stockpile all that dirt that's going to come out of the creek. In the specs that were written by the Army Corps and flood control to the contractor, what was written in there was it was up to the contractor however they wanted to dispose of the dirt, whether they were going to sell it or stockpile it on that property. So in the interim, we were kind of thinking, well, let's talk to the contractor. Why don't we buy the dirt? Why don't we buy the dirt and let's start working on the sports park in that area? Now, flood control has always been a little hesitant to that idea because of the before condition when they thought they were going to get all the way to Winchester and the next phase was coming and they were going to capitalize. Well, that dream, so to speak, went away because it was scaled back. So now they have a project that now they have to go to the federal government, and flood control has asked for $6 million to redesign from Montezuma to Winchester to redo the Winchester Bridge, just like they had to do at Rancho California Road. So Rancho Cal Bridge is getting seismically retrofitted, and Winchester, they expected the same. So they've requested that money. Now, as you guys know, Congress has not approved the budget, so they have no idea whether they're getting that money. And it's quite possible in talking with flood control at the groundbreaking, talking to flood control, what are the chances that they will get another $50 million to keep going into areas where there are not parcels that are that critical to get out of the floodway? Because as you know, it goes into more ag, custom residential, Murrieta. So there's not the amount. We had 211 parcels here in Old Town effectively removed from the floodplain. So all in all, we've run it by legal. We can do this. So it has risen in kind of our attention span of like, well, maybe because of the change that happened with flood control in the Army Corps, we have the opportunity to jump on it and start looking at the sports park. And so that's currently where it stands. We're arranging meetings right now with flood control to kind of flush this idea. It's encouraging to hear that flood control is looking at it and going, yeah, probably not within our lifetime will we get that detention basin in. And so therefore, there's an opportunity.
So maybe one of the questions I'll pose to the council, and there's, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts on this thing. We're going to Washington with the mayor in a couple of weeks. This has been on our lobbying high priority list. I imagine it'll stay on that. We'll be looking at grants. We have a corporate sponsorship policy that the council's going to weigh in on in another month. We see this project potentially falling into that category with maybe folks wanting to step up to help the city, maybe a public-private, maybe a private-public, who knows? But what I do know is there's a demand. I think there's offsetting revenue down the road. And I don't want to sit around and let another decade go by. And I feel like the time is now. I think I know this is important to this council to push the envelope. And so my question is this: do you want us to continue to stay aggressively pursuing any and all funding for this project? And if the answer is yes, that's all I need to know. If we come into funding, if there's available funding, would the council like to see this project that we're talking about attempt to be fully funded and moving on a positive track? And if the answer is yes, then that's good direction for me as well. So I'll put it back over to you, Mayor.
Perfect. I'll start it off. Yes. Councilman Schwenk.
Yeah, I'm a solid yes. I'll give you a couple reasons why and some other food for thought. So, we know just from a recreation standpoint that there's a huge deficit. I mean, and then there's, all sorts of new sports coming online, right? And so we're constantly getting folks coming to us saying like, oh, we'd love a place to play, name the sport, right? And so I think like we know if we were to build, a sports complex there or some fields there, a sports park or, something like the Great Park in Irvine or whatever, something like that, we know that it would get used, right? But I wonder, and I think that there's opportunities for us to really, like, what can someone envision this space to be? I've had separate meetings with different groups, whether it's, soccer folks, baseball folks, seeing what Ontario did with the Ontario Sports Empire and that entire complex. Are we sort of like leaving a lot on the table if all we're envisioning it is like a sports park? Like, I think we are. I think we're leaving a ton on the table, and we own that Diaz-Dindy Parkway parcel as well. So if you look at this on a map, and I wish I could just share my screen, like the space between the detention basin and then the property that we own on the other side of Diaz, this is a very large parcel. Obviously, there's creek there and things like that. But if anyone's sort of seen like where the sports entertainment world is going, like, man, I could see us just like, hey, let's do an RFP. Like, what can this parcel produce? I mean, it could produce like a really nice product where, you've got freeway frontage for, you're going to add hotels. I mean, we've got a couple new hotels right there anyways. There's other infrastructure going, there's homes across the street. So I would love us to see, us continue just full court press on this project. Can we buy the property? Could we approach Riverside County Flood and say, we'd like to buy this property? And then do an RFP, and then we're the only ones sort of like looking at this saying like, okay, this is what we want on this property. I think, Mr. City Manager, I would like for you to continue to just, like I said, full court press on this. I do think there's opportunities to meet with folks again and have that conversation in a little more serious tone, especially Riverside County Flood, and then on the private side of things, like in the sports world, continue those conversations and really come up with something that would be much greater than just 12 fields. And while I appreciate all the work that's gone into designing those fields, that was sort of like initially like, yeah, if we could do that, that would be amazing. But I think there's some opportunity here that we need to have a vision for and capitalize on.
No, and just to be clear, we didn't spend a boatload of money designing anything, but we kind of intuitively know what we could fit in the way of multi-purpose fields plus parking plus some lighting, but we haven't spent anything significant in the way of design because we're hesitant to, because we don't have this green light or this permission yet. So, other thoughts?
Councilman Ron?
We're not anticipating any pickleball courts out there. I'm kidding. So,
do you want pickleball courts?
I don't know. That
there?
might be a great spot for it. But if a couple quick questions. One on the redesign of the property, if it is going to sports field, it's still going to retain its ability to serve as a flood basin, though.
The portion that's required for the flood basin does not impact kind of what we're looking at there. So, we've talked about concepts with flood control, and so there's still so much acreage still remaining to accommodate Murrieta Creek, because it's a really, really large area that we're talking about.
Right. And so question then is, if we're going to retain some of that capability on the property, do we have to worry about any acquisitions from Riverside County Flood if we wanted to convert it to sports use?
You mean, would they be amenable to that, or?
Well, would we have to? Why wouldn't we just bring them in as a partner on this as the county instead of putting real dollars?
Well, ideally we'd like to, and I think ideally we'd ask for like a $50 a year lease agreement to do what it is that we're envisioning there. But because they're the underlying property owner, and because they have this multi-phase Army Corps Murrieta Creek phase 3 and 4, it's complicated, and we're asking them to really ask themselves, is that really, those future phases, are they viable to the point where you can give us permission and still keep things going without mucking up their federal funding? And I think that's the crux of what the conversation we need to have.
Yeah, so I guess that's my point is if we can pin that down, then, you know, I love the concept of public-private partnerships and what we could potentially do there, but it's all kind of pointless if we can't figure that one piece out.
Exactly.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'd say full steam ahead on that one to see
Okay.
if we can get an agreement in place.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Stu?
Yes, I'm 100% supportive of this complex. And is it currently in the CIP?
Yes.
Okay, good.
It's in there. It's got a very large unfunded number. I want to say we had about 2 million, 2.2, something like that. In the event that we could begin some preliminary design work or things of that nature. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I fully support it.
Mayor Pro Tem?
All right, thank you very much, Mayor. And I'm in agreement with my colleagues. Again, on this one, I look at this as a high priority for sure. Again, just like Stu had said, partially funded. And also it's going to be a strong opportunity for, a return on investment for this one. You know, we want to get all of these different projects funded. This is an excellent way to bring money back into the city, whether through hotels, restaurants, tournaments, things like that. And so I think we need to move forward on this because this is going to be able to help our safety areas and different things that we need to maintain in our city by bringing revenue in. Also, it's a need in our community for sure. The youth and the adults definitely can use this. We see the soccer fields across our area, and I think this could be a great opportunity for our city, for people to come in. Also, one of the things, city manager, I know myself and Councilmember Schwank had an opportunity within the last 6 months or maybe 7 months where we got to connect with the cricket community. And I know that right now people are like, cricket, where does that come from? I've been doing a lot of research on it. It is actually becoming a huge sport here within California, and it's growing. I'm just wondering, can we pull out a little niche for individuals to be able to, for the hundreds of people that play on Sunday at a baseball field and make it work? Is that something we could possibly take a little piece of that sports field and be able to carve that out for that community? Because it is growing and there's tournaments all over California with that sport. So thank you.
You have our answers. Full
Okay.
steam ahead.
Mr. Ron has
I
a
could
question.
totally support cricket because it's like just a bat and two sticks, right? I mean, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
He's
similar
all
to,
in for cricket, but don't bring up
similar
pickleball.
to tennis and pickleball, baseball and
Yeah.
cricket don't
Yeah.
hybrid. There's no hybrid there.
Okay, no, that is helpful. We will, Ron, I know you're working on a meeting with staff to staff with flood control. If we need to bring council members in on the heels of that, I think we consider that. Supervisor Washington also integral in those conversations as well. And we have this window that's pretty tight as they start their extraction of dirt to really try to get this right. I'm not willing to buy dirt or pay for transported dirt and stockpiling of dirt and smoothing of dirt unless we can get a reassurance from the property owner that this is going to fulfill our long-term plans. And if it does, and it's raising the profile of our future sports complex, yet to be designed, yet to be determined, then I have no problem prioritizing that expenditure and looking for it. So,
Understood. Yeah.
Okay.
Meeting first.
all right, moving right along. Mercedes sidewalk, $2.5 million. Mr. Mayor, this may look familiar to you. I think we had a conversation a few months ago. You were curious about what's happening out here on Mercedes, kind of along Mr. Truax's property. And we just ran some very rough preliminary numbers. As you guys all know, our corporate position historically is to allow private development to come in and then condition them appropriately to build the curb gutter sidewalks within their responsible area. That was going to be the plan with the Truax Hotel. And obviously that did not come to fruition. Public Works did what they could in sort of laying down some asphalt in this respective area. So we do have a better path of travel It's not designed to be the permanent solution out there, but I thought, heck, we're talking about, these kinds of projects. Is this something that the council would be amenable to continue to wait for private development as we sit here today? Or is this something that you'd like us to shake the bushes again and really try to find grants and or dollars associated with putting those in sooner than later? So I just kind of want to open it up. Mayor, you may want to start because I know you're pretty well versed on this one.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mr. Moreno, could you just read the mission statement of Public Works for me again real quick?
Sure. Mission of the Public Works Department is to provide quality services that support the infrastructure demands of the city of Temecula and enhance the safety, welfare, and aesthetic environment of the residents, businesses, and visitors. This is accomplished through the development and maintenance of city streets, sidewalks, traffic systems, bike lanes, parks, buildings, trails, and drainage facilities. Professional engineering oversight of public and private improvement projects and implementation of erosion sediment controls and stormwater quality measures.
Thank you very much. That statement alone, I guess, is my reasoning for making this a high priority on my list. When we had the Mercedes Street road closures conversation at the council level a few months ago, I had the opportunity to talk to many businesses and employees in Old Town. And a lot of the businesses asked their employees to park in the parking structure. That way they free up all the side streets and as well as Front Street and Mercedes for patrons of their businesses. So a lot of the employees park in the parking structure. The problem is there's a lack of infrastructure to get to businesses. There's a lack of sidewalks. There's a lack of street lighting. There's a lack of crosswalks, even across Mercedes Street, unless you go down here. So you have to walk out of the parking structure, which again, no crosswalk. You have to walk down to City Hall, and then that's how you get to across Mercedes Street. So there's been really a lack of infrastructure on Mercedes, and I totally understand and agree with the city's usual management of how properties are developed by having the developer come in and pay for the infrastructure. To me, this is now the 36th year of Temecula's history. Mercedes has not been developed to, I would say, what we thought it would be developed a decade ago. Not to the city's fault, but just to the lack of private development. And I think it is time as us as a city, we start to improve Mercedes Street and entice people to come in and develop and make Mercedes Street a similar street to Old Town Front Street. And I think it's that time. And like our head of public works just said, the safety, welfare, and aesthetics of infrastructure, that alone is what Mercedes needs. Again, for safety reasons, if you talk to the employees in Old Town, they don't feel comfortable walking up 3rd Street, where again, there's no sidewalks or lighting on 3rd Street, to Mercedes Street, where there's it's a lot of unsidewalked and unlit areas, and there's not crosswalks in front of the parking structure to get out of the parking structure. So in my mind, it is time for us to really dig deep and improve Mercedes Street. But again, I know that $2.5 million is a big ask, but I am looking for our city team to shake those trees and see what we can do to make it better for not only the businesses and their employees, but also the residents and the patrons of Old Town. But if anyone wants to follow up with that, Mayor Pro Tem.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mayor. So this was actually one of the things I just had a meeting with the city manager and team to be able to just kind of prioritize and take a look through what I had looked at through some of my homework and trying to get an idea. And so I think it's important. Yes, we do need sidewalks, just like the whole point of why we do what we do as a city is to make sure that we have availability for everybody. One of my concerns was ADA purposes. Can people get on there? Is it safe? But my first question to them really is how many streets do we have here in Old Town that need to be up to date? I guess just like this one. Mr. Ron Moreno, can you answer that for me?
Sure. So obviously Mercedes is not built out to its ultimate because there are no sidewalks, as the mayor mentioned. There's no streetlights going down. So there's a gap in Mercedes. Some of the other areas of Mercedes are okay, but this area down here by City Hall is not. Hopefully, we were hoping on Barrel Republic was going to come in. That didn't happen. They had improvements that they had designed. We actually had a CIP project that did the north half of 3rd Street sidewalks that was going to go in conjunction with the Truax building. The reason it needed to go together is because there's going to be a change of profile in 3rd Street all the way down, because it needs to be built to ADA standards, drainage standards, and everything else. Well, as soon as Truax Hotel went away, Barrel Republic didn't go forward. Now we have partial design that was never completed going down 3rd Street. So 3rd Street is one of them, to your question. 4th Street, same thing. There is a boutique hotel going in. That hotel was going to do their improvements. And coincidentally, we did reach an agreement with that hotel developer originally that they would do the opposite side of 4th Street, in front of 4th Street Garage and the empty building there. That was all going to be done by the developer and get reimbursed as that development came forward someday. We were able to work that out. Same thing, that hotel has not gone forward. The improvements haven't gone forward on 4th Street. Beyond that, we also have the parking lots that have been recently improved out here in front of in front of the Civic Center, City Hall. Those improvements are great. It allows parking, less dust. It's been working out very nicely. But as you've seen, those sidewalks, yes, there's rolled curb, but the sidewalks are not done to the ultimate Old Town specific plan standard, which would be the stamp boardwalk. So those need to be completed by someday future development. This council already approved the construction of the 6th Street sidewalk, so those were complete. So 6th Street's pretty much done. 5th Street, same thing, has a vacant parcel that needs to be completed. So improvements would be done there. But the city council did approve for us to do the bulb outs in front of the old Goat and Vine, the 2 Travelers. So those were redone. So those bulb outs were complete. So to answer the question, there's definite gaps throughout Old Town, but the predominant ones are 3rd, 4th, and Mercedes of what's lacking.
Okay. And how have we prioritized the difference between 3rd, 4th, and Mercedes? Is there something that needs to go ahead of that? Is there a certain order that we are looking at, moving forward to getting each one of these on the books to get that accomplished?
Well, this is good we're having this discussion because, as the city manager mentioned, we have always prioritized it as development first. As development comes in, we will ask them to build these facilities. So we've never prioritized it as, okay, CIP, let's look for money, let's look for grants, let's look for this. It's always been based upon development. Just by the mere fact we had so many development applications in at a time. Now, the Truax development is now expired, so they would have to reapply. And I believe the 4th Street Hotel is on its last extension of their map. So therefore, that could go away as well. So to answer your question, we've always prioritized it by development, not by CIP.
And then if I could just ask one last question, just to clarify. So if we have development, let's say we complete this project, and then all of a sudden a hotel comes in, let's say with the Truax area, something comes in for some type of development. Where would we end up spending that money? The money that they would normally pay for the sidewalks, but we completed them.
So if we complete them, that would be on us, that we are expending that money and we probably will not get that back. There's the off chance you can lien properties for them to pay for their development, but that's a process that the city attorney really doesn't care for. So we haven't really done that before. We've been able to work between 2 developers and make them one pay and the other pay them back. That can work. But as far as us getting those funds, recovering those funds, we never would. It would be improving them at the city's cost.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, City Manager, is we have kind of 2 sides here. We have one where are we willing to allow the developers to continue to do what we've always done and build up their areas, or are the taxpayers going to pay that? Is that kind of where we're at right now?
What you're hearing is there's a couple different paths. We could stay the course with the temporary situation that's out there today. It's passable, not ideal, not permanent. That's an option. Another option is for the city on its dime, and by doing so, you would be relieving the developer or a future developer of their obligations to improve their frontage.
Yes.
Okay? Unless Peter Thorson had a different opinion and said, yeah, if you spend $2.5 million, you lien that property and I'm comfortable with that. But that, again, that's a legal conversation. and Ron kind of knows how those have gone. That is an option, but I don't know if it's a preferred option. So does that make sense? So
Yeah.
if this is a priority, city's funding, you're relieving the developer likely of future obligations.
All right, thank you. So for me, I think
We
right,
just don't have a timeline, so it's
Absolutely.
tough to know.
and all of these seem like very important. And there's nothing that, all of these definitely are something important, every one of those up there. However, if I'm looking at money and financing right now, I just don't think that this is a top priority that we need to look at. Maybe this is something we put in the back of the book and we kind of see how things unroll with any other developments as we move forward. But again, I think it's up to the developer to be able to maintain and, get them aesthetically ready for the city. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a follow-up question on that, Mr. Moreno. When we redid the Old Town Front Street planks, was that a developer-driven project, or was that the city of Temecula funded?
For the plants,
For the planks we did, I think it was about,
oh, the
planks
planks.
out,
Oh, yeah.
where we redid all the frontage on.
No,
Old
that
Town
was a
Front Street.
city-led project. That was
Okay.
city-led because of the liability with the wooden. They were coming up, people were tripping, and so that was a city-led project.
Absolutely. And just for the, just to hit on the potential for return on investment, it could be argued that if we were to develop a street like Mercedes Street and developers came in sooner and had tax generating businesses there, the return on investment would become from a sales tax revenue generated by businesses being there. So just a different way of looking at it, where if we leave it as is, not developer friendly, but I totally understand, again, and agree with the past stance of the city to wait for developers to come in and build up. To me, my argument is it has gotten to the point where it is not safe for residents, businesses, employees to have a Mercedes Street that is left undone. And the difference between the side streets, 1st through 6th Street, to me is that Mercedes is the exit point for a majority of individuals parking in Old Town, since there's the parking structure there. And leaving that unfinished, no crosswalks, no sidewalks, no street lighting, we don't give them an access point to go to the businesses on Mercedes Street without having to walk down to City Hall, walk across the street, and then you're back onto Mercedes Street if you want to go to anything in the Truax building or anything on the south side of Old Town without hitting a spot. There's no sidewalks, no lighting. So at nighttime, it's been brought to my concern that residents and employees don't feel safe walking up there. But that's my main thing for that. Councilmember Stu?
Yeah, so my feeling on this is I just feel like we could be putting in sidewalks that are going to get tore up during the construction of the new building that's going to go in there. So without knowing exactly what's going in there, it's going to be really difficult to do this project because it could be a short-term fix. I love the asphalt idea. I mean, when we put the asphalt in, I thought that was a great temporary solution until development came in and actually did it, properly. But I can't support spending that money, and I understand your logic, and heck, we built City Hall here, and that's what created all the investment in Old Town. So the logic is there. But I think when it comes to Mercedes, because as I drive down Mercedes, all the vacant lots are along Mercedes. I mean, the front street side of Temecula looks very full and very done. And then you just come over to Mercedes and you're driving down a bunch of vacant lots. And so I would rather the developer pay for these sidewalks than the taxpayers. That's my preference.
Makes total sense. Thank you. Councilmember Ron?
Well, I'd like to see us maybe just explore this a little bit as creative solutions. I know that, there's some hesitancy to lean properties, in the future. But, I wonder if we deal with this more from the perspective of the specific plan. So any new development that's coming in should be contributing to the overall improvement of Old Town, right? So is there a mechanism we could explore that says, future projects within the specific plan should, pay a fee that goes into, general sidewalk improvements, because it's good for the whole Old Town area, not just the developer themselves. The other one is, I don't know, just go ask the developer or the property owners right now, hey, are you okay? Nobody wants their property leaned against for improvements, but is there some kind of consensus that says, hey, this is good for future sales of your property, the optics of, all of the investment that had, because that was the original investment on Front Street years ago with the original wooden sidewalks, was redevelopment funds to get people to want to come to Old Town and build. And so, Mr. Mayor, I see where you're coming from, is that, yeah, that makes sense. I don't agree that the $2.5 million should come out of our pocket, though. And we should have some mechanism for recovery. So, I wouldn't give up on this entirely, and maybe we could just keep poking at it to see if there's a solution somewhere in there. I am worried about abandoned costs, that if we do build something and then somebody comes in and redesigns the elevations or, the whatever street design, that, all of a sudden we're going to be tearing out hundreds of thousands of dollars of infrastructure. I don't like the idea of that. I feel like that's just a waste of money. But yeah, I wouldn't mind exploring, other options within the specific plan that may work. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But I wouldn't want to give up the ghost quite yet.
Councilmember Stu?
One more question. So I do have concerns about what the mayor brought up about lighting on, these temporary sidewalks that we've put in. Is there a way we can get some sort of temporary lighting that could also be addressed? Because it can get kind of dark and a little spooky at certain times of the night. And if there's a way we can temporarily light it in the same manner or the same aesthetics of the rest of Old Town, I would like to look into those type of solutions also.
I don't know about a temporary lighting solution, Ron, unless you.
The only thing I could think of is similar to what the parking lots are doing right
The
now.
barrels
We have
and
lighting
solar.
in the barrels, solar,
Yeah.
that light up the parking lot.
Right.
It doesn't match any Old Town standard, so it doesn't look the same. However, that's the only temporary solution we've had. We did put those over in at First Street, the Steve Kim lot. So those are in over there as well. And whenever they get hit, we replace them. So it is temporary, definitely. In
Very
nature.
temporary.
But, that would be for you to give direction to the city manager, and then we could look at
Well,
that.
just from a public safety standpoint, I mean, safety is our business here. It would be nice to have that solution available to us. So
Maybe what we can do is put our heads together outside this workshop. If there are other solutions that go beyond sort of the solar barrel model, given the nature of the tight space that these sidewalks exist in. Plus, when you put parking up against the asphalt, it's pretty tight anyway to get any kind of infrastructure, lighting infrastructure in there. So let us put our heads together and see if we can't come up with something else. I do have a question, Ron, for you, though. It was mentioned, and I don't know the answer to this, but if we were to take on the ultimate sidewalks, curb gutter, for that stretch around the private property, and is there a chance that the profile of the street will change and make this a throwaway project? Or could we envision what the profile of the street will have to be at a later date and build the sidewalks to accommodate that? And because I don't want to sit here and say it's a $2.5 million sidewalk project if it's really an $8 million project, because you got to rebuild 3rd Street.
Yeah, Mercedes itself, the profile won't change. And so when our CIP team looked at Mercedes and the improvements that were going to be required, the reason it became 2.5 was bulb outs. It's the sidewalk, it's the street trees, it's the lighting, it's the conduit, all the components that make up the Old Town specific plan. It's not just a sidewalk. It's all the infrastructure associated with the sidewalk
To
and the street
match what we
trees and the
have.
music and having all of those facilities in place, because as you mentioned, those are not things you want to throw away. So if we're going to do it, we do it to the specific plan standard all the way through and through. That way there is no throwaway, and so that's the reason for the 2.5 million, is because that was a good estimate of what it would take to finish the sidewalks going from our parking lots down to the end. Because recall too, there's a whole lot that needs to be done at the old Barrel Republic site, so that's encroaching onto the sidewalk area. There's a gas line that needs to be relocated. There's a fire hydrant that needs to be relocated. A tree needs to be removed. But to answer your question, that profile won't change. Where the profiles are going to change are on third and fourth.
Yeah, so so you can you engineer and design and build a sidewalk on third and fourth that will accommodate a future street profile change or not?
We'd be taking on a street reconstruction, which we didn't factor that into the
overall cost.
No, this is purely Mercedes.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then
Thanks for
along the
clarifying.
points of, restructuring the Old Town specific plan and such, we did take an ordinance change about 3 years ago where prior to, the only nexus to be able to get some of these improvements is if there was a map. For instance, Bernie, doing a parcel map to get all his lots, which they're all those individual skinny lots from the old Town days. He has a map, there's a nexus for it. But what we did, the council approved a change to the municipal ordinance, and that change made it so that in the event of a TI improvement or a new restaurant that's maybe not even changing their property lines, it's going into existing spot, we have the ability to ask them to do their improvements. And so that's something we've done with new businesses that have come in. We've asked them to do their improvements whenever they have some type of change that's being processed through the planning department, some type of TI, some type of planning application. We can condition them for their frontage improvements.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Councilmember Schwenk?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I am never going to oppose basic mobility, and I think sidewalks are just basic mobility for people. This isn't anything that we haven't ever done. In fact, we just finished a project on Inez right across from the duck pond that is a sidewalk project that was not developer driven. We've done it on Inez closer to Rancho Vista in the past. We're doing one on Paba Road. I think we have an obligation to close sidewalk gaps, and I think it's really important because at the end of the day, we're all walking somewhere, right? Even if we drive here, you're still walking somewhere. And I think we need to think about that. Now, I understand the developer-driven side of things and how that saves, taxpayer dollars. But, it also puts a burden on development. And if we're talking about, someone doing a minor change and they have, I have to do my sidewalks now, that could be problematic. I like what we've done in Old Town specifically with asphalt. I think we've been pretty flexible. And if you actually look at the Old Town grid, there's quite a lot of asphalt, 3rd Street, obviously the Y. But Mercedes is one of those streets that, especially in, directly across the street here, where you're walking in the street, and, to the mayor's point about, no crosswalks, sort of any intersection is technically a crosswalk, right? But there's nothing striped there. But if you actually look at the entrance and exit to the parking structure, there's no pedestrian exit or entrance there. People do walk out of it though, but there's not a sidewalk that comes out of the parking structure. So we need to look at that. If we were to put sidewalks there, what sort of liability, or, what does that look like? Farther down, closer to, the corner there's a nice bulb out that really narrows the street. And I know we don't really like mid-block crossings, but I think adding a legitimate crossing there, because if you watch how people actually interact with Old Town, that's where they cross. It's the shortest distance across. And so you'll see people walk up there to get to that southern entrance in the parking structure. And so maybe those are things we could look at. Along 4th Street, I think we should do what we did along 3rd Street is stripe it, because the asphalt is somewhat there for a sidewalk, but everyone's parking on the sidewalk portion of it. So if you look at the street, it's totally wide enough to accommodate, this sort of temp sidewalk stuff. But I know in years past, we've used CDBG dollars to do these projects. Mm-hmm. I would be in favor of adding this to the overall sort of gap closure analysis, whatever you want, whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called. But I think it's something that we need to do. We have an obligation to make it easier for folks to get around. And if we can close the sidewalk gap and make it more inviting, I think we should be doing that. And like I said, this isn't something that we haven't done. We do this all over the city. When there is a gap in a sidewalk, we'll fix it. We don't always wait for development to fix it. And then to Councilmember Ron's point about, other mechanisms, I know in the Uptown's specific plan, we have like the streets in lieu fee. Like, can we add a sidewalks in lieu fee or some sort of like, bank for this so that, folks can pay into it as development comes, but we don't sit here in 10 years from now, another council's going like, hey, well, this development didn't come in and there's still no sidewalks like directly in front of City Hall. Because I do think that gap for me is very critical. From the 3rd Street to the alley is a very critical gap. And I think it's important that at the very least, we just looked at that gap, right? And try to figure out what can we do. I know it's complicated because you can see it, it's right across the street, what's going on there. But, in the hierarchy of things, like I would look at that gap, it's a half a block essentially. And sort of like, what can we do there in the short term, but then long term adding and I know they're already all in there. We already have this in there, but adding this to that sort of gap analysis stuff as we're looking, that Inez Road section that was just built was part of that. And we looked at it and said, hey, this is a high need and we're going to fix it. And we didn't put it on, any sort of development. It was something that as a city, if you want to talk about public safety, getting run over by a car is not very safe. And so we want to make sure that people have a safe way to travel if they're walking. So I'm in support of adding this to that overall gap analysis stuff.
Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, I think I heard enough to warrant going back to the well and creating a project sheet specific to sidewalks on Mercedes only. We can crunch some numbers. We can explore interim lighting and then maybe get some firm numbers on reconstruction. We can also have a conversation with legal about things like in lieu sidewalk fees as it relates to the Old Town SP and do all that. And then, bring something back that's either, fully funded or something that's design funded or some semblance in between. But it sounds like there's enough consensus here to elevate this and create its own standalone project sheet. So I'm prepared to do that. Is that, Mr. Mayor, okay with you?
Absolutely, yes. No, that I agree with that.
Okay. All right. Sheriff Station, we've had there's a lot of history behind this. We scheduled a city council subcommittee meeting or a subcommittee for a year. We toured, we asked a lot of questions. We did some analysis. We've looked at properties. We haven't obviously spent any money on acquisition or design. These are very rough. They're very big numbers. There's nothing that's in the CIP today to memorialize that effort. We've had a lot of conversations, both closed session and open session about this. So Councilman Stu, I know you're passionate about this, and so maybe it's appropriate for me to kick it over to you and then let your colleagues kind of weigh in. So.
All right. Well, I know I'm the Lone Ranger on this item, but for me, it's not, and I'm not even asking for a sheriff's station, by the way. I'm asking for the public safety infrastructure that would allow a city council in the future, if they ever decided to want to build a sheriff's station in the city of Temecula, we have the infrastructure or the plot of land necessary to pull this off, because we're literally painting ourselves into a corner. We're running out of property. There's very, very little property left in the city of Temecula. And as we can see, the sheriff's station estimate is now 80 million. It was 50 million a year ago. And so we're watching the cost of this public safety infrastructure go up exponentially every year. And as a city that, we're a safe city, but you're safe until you're not. And then all of a sudden, these things take high priority and cost way, way more money than a city should have to spend. If they had done the homework beforehand and gotten themselves into a position that they could actually do something, this is what frustrates me is we're going to spend $9 million rebuilding a gym and a fire station and renovate a fire station, and we won't invest in a piece of public safety infrastructure that's going to be crucial to our city one day. Now, today may not be the day, but that day is coming. I mean, I got a couple reports on my phone of some incidents that took place yesterday. And it's like, come on, people. This is a real issue. We have a city that is used by more people than just our residents. We invite people into our community every single weekend by the tens of thousands. We get bad people that come along with, and they're probably casing the joint, just to see what they can take advantage of us. And so I think we have to do this eventually. And so I'm just saying, let's look forward thinking on this and say, let's just at least purchase some property that can be used as public safety infrastructure. We got a $30 million fire training academy center coming up. It's like, really? I mean, when it comes to the crimes that I'm seeing, I think that is a higher priority than a fire training center. And so that's where I'm going. It's like, we're spending money on a whole lot of other stuff. I mean, $11 million just on our skate park, skate rink, 3.2 on pickleball. We're spending a lot of money on fun stuff, but when it comes right down to it, if we can't be safe at the fun stuff, that stuff's not going to get used. So that's what I'm thinking. It's not going to happen in my career here, for sure. I know that. So, but I think we have to, as this council, look forward to the next 2 or 3 or 4 councils and say, what are we going to do for them to put them in a better position than we are today? And we're not doing it.
Well said, Stu. Was it Councilmember Schwenk? Were you on the subcommittee with Stu on that?
I was, yeah. I'd happily go next.
Perfect.
So we did a tour, like a regional tour, and gleaned a ton of really good information from that. I think the most important thing is like every city's different, right? And so, like I'm not, and I've never been opposed to this, which is why I got on the subcommittee, but I don't know that, an 80 million is just like a number we threw out there. Like, yeah. So like, it's a significant amount of money. And I don't really like the conversation where, you're starting to see where we're all puppy guarding our projects. We're saying, oh, we shouldn't spend money on this, or we shouldn't spend money on that, but we spent money on this and we're now spending money on that. And I don't know if that's like the best way to go about this. I guess it is the way that, this works. We did look at a piece of property on Business Park Drive that abuts the Public Works, our field operations center. We ultimately voted unanimously not to make an offer on that. So, to your point, Councilmember Stewart, we have looked at property. I think the models are different, and clearly the models are different. Fire protection and police protection, the models are different. So, I think, I'm not going to support the, adding this to the CIP as it stands right now. I think we're also overlooking the investment that we've made here at City Hall, whether it's the Old Town storefront, the sheriff's station, or upstairs. I do think there are some more opportunities here long term where we have some office space in the parking structure and the old Welcome Center. I think there's opportunities here that we should continue to explore before we go down the path of setting up a future council, which if there's anything we can sort of pull from this is like, who knows what that council is going to look like, right? Like they could have a completely different vision for the city, and maybe they'd turn that parcel into pickleball complex or something like that. But I do think that, there are opportunities for us with the properties that we currently have, but then also like leaning on our public safety partners and going, what do you need? What do you want? And I don't think this council has ever said no. We've never said no to make our public safety partners more efficient and be able to deliver a better service for our residents. So I just don't know that this is the right use of that significant amount of money right now. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councilman Ron?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always about public safety. I don't know, and just out of curiosity, we have, last report I heard, 21 officers sworn that operate out of our existing infrastructure in Temecula.
That's correct.
How many total do we have on any given day?
We're functioning out of this building?
No, just within the city proper.
We patrol. Our patrol deployment is 8 or 9 deputy sheriffs, 2 sergeants, 12-hour shifts, and then our deployment strategy is designed in a way that the city's never not with deputies in the field. We do that very strategically so that we have people moving in through the space, for coverage 24 hours a day.
Well, and I guess that's kind of my point is that we have a number of officers who are starting their shift here in town now. That didn't used to be the case, right? And I understood that, hey, there's that delay, there's that lag. When I did the ride-alongs with you all, I noticed a benefit of having that drive through the city before and after shift. There was some of that went on, but that I think was part of the original concern, was just having more folks starting shift here to optimize their time in the city. I think that's less of an issue now, and I think we've invested a lot in the infrastructure, especially here at City Hall, to help improve all of that. We're still one of the safest cities in the country, and so my concern is $80 million, investment, whether we do it now or whether we do it later. The numbers are always going to change. The costs of development are always going to change. The interesting part of that is, depending on where we are as an economy, sometimes those costs go down significantly too, right? So it's not always just an increase, but that kind of investment, and I don't know what our ranking is now. I mean, there's like a dozen different rank. It used to be a little more simple, but we're in the top 20 some odd, right?
Yeah, it's more complicated now because of crime stat reporting required by the feds and the state. And so it's much different now. And larger agencies like the Sheriff's Office have been required to adopt this new reporting, where smaller agencies don't. Mm-hmm. So you are going to see that. But yeah, by and large, the city of Temecula is a safe place to be.
Yeah.
I will offer though, I certainly appreciate Councilman Stewart's passion around this topic and issue. And I think that that's wise that he's thinking about that long term, maybe not right now, but long term. Councilman Schwank's take on it is also valid. And I think that we've gone a long way by utilizing this building and this space here. And there's still some more work that we can do here. If you really think about, where people come when they're here to visit the city of Temecula, we have a very significant law enforcement presence here in this core downtown area. Visitors and citizens alike will see deputy sheriffs and the black and whites moving in and out of this space. And I think that that's good and it's important. We can continue to examine ways to maximize that in this space down here, and we should. And it was unprecedented. We had never really operated where we were putting deputy sheriffs out of a city hall building where they report here and end their day. And I think that that was a really wise and strategic decision to make, and we can continue to build on that. And yes, it's true. Council has never told us no. Within reason, and we've always enjoyed that support. It's one of the things that makes this city and this station that I oversee such a great place to work, because of this level of support that we enjoy. And we will continue, right? Whether it's myself, Lieutenant Pearson, who's embedded here out of this building, that helps me run the day-to-day operation for the city of Temecula. We will continue to look for ways to make sure that we're responsive and it's timely and that we are doing the things that need done in order to be able to best serve the community in this particular area down here that is so vital and so important to the city of Temecula.
Thank you. And I just end by saying we do own a lot of property that are not, utilized parcels, right? A lot of vacant parcels out there that have some options. We've gone through that planning effort in the past, trying to figure out what to do with that. And some decisions just never got made, which is why I think there was that beautification enhancement, on city parcels, because they're just kind of sitting there. So I'd hate to see that disappear. But I also think that as a city, we're always on the lookout. And I think historically, we've always been on the lookout as parcels, are out there for acquisition. And if it becomes a priority for either city infrastructure or something that's a priority for us, we've never been shy about, seeking those additional acquisitions. And I don't think we should be. And, like next to the old city hall, I think that was a good, property to look at. I don't think, we made our decisions based on, current pricing and condition of the property that just didn't fit, the vision. But I think we should still keep that, as part of the city, whether it's for law enforcement or any city infrastructure. I think that's an important thing, that cities never give up that search. But right now, I just can't see putting this on the CIP.
Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem?
All righty. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ron and Stu, for bringing this up. I know this has been a deep conversation. I'm just looking right here. And I hope I did my math right here on a quick piece of paper here. I believe this whole thing is costing us about $143 million. Is that about right? Anybody? How much is the total of all of this? Somewhere about 143. Okay. Obviously, it's a big chunk. And then we have a couple other big chunks coming down the pipeline. Quick question. What is the benefit of having this sheriff station in comparison right now to what we have? That's my one question. So it sounds like things are working. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But what I'm hearing from Councilmember Stu is it could be broken later on. Things are always going to change. I remember myself and Stu talked about this as a possible insurance policy. $80 million is a lot of money. Where are we at right now with that? What does that look like? As far as, like the benefit of having this station if we go forward?
Well, ma'am, I mean, there's pros and cons to all of it, right? I think maybe just operationally speaking, right, you move the entirety of your city paid assets, your contract assets into the city of Temecula. And so, ultimately there has to be an evaluation by council to find out if that is worth the cost. We, like I said, we are very thoughtful in how we deploy our deputies. And I probably should have mentioned, you have the deputies who are assigned specifically to handle patrol calls for service, right? But we also push traffic into the space and all of our special teams, whether that's SET, CORE. So you have a lot of personnel that are on duty and moving in and out of that space at all hours of the day and night here. You're never going to hear me argue against a big, beautiful building the way that Temecula does things, right? It would be done right. It would be a great space to be in. Minus that, I still believe that we are going to make Temecula one of the safest places to be, and we do, and we will continue to do so. So again, just to kind of revisit, I don't think Councilman Stewart is wrong about thinking about, even just land acquisition long term, because we don't know what it looks like. But I've heard city manager talk about Temecula being at near build out as far as population, maybe another 20 or 30,000 people, kind of landlocked. And so, yeah, I think that there should probably be a healthy evaluation as to what are we trying to fix, if anything at all, right now, as it sits right now. And if there's some glaring deficiency, then we certainly can look at that. But
absolutely,
yeah, it's something that I think that it warrants a healthy evaluation.
Thank you very much. And then, City Manager, we're still looking for parcels. I know there's some stuff going on in closed session that we've had that we can't really talk too much about, but there's been a movement to try to see if we can secure something. Is that correct?
Well, actually, I believe that process has come to an end
We're done with that. Okay, we completed.
based
Okay.
on the council's direction to me, closed session.
That's right. Okay. So that being said, the other thing, I just want to throw this out there, is if we do put this down the road as needing something, again, long-term, later on, have we even considered the possibilities of mixing the sheriff's station with the EOC center and combining that? Is that something maybe we, if that is something later on the council wants to do, that would be a great opportunity to combine the two. I don't know, whatever that looks like. But they're, in my opinion, they'd be kind of running in the same direction. If there's an emergency, there's something happening. Again, I'm listening to the council. It's not something that they're wanting with the sheriff's station, but I'm just thinking long-term, if that is later on, we're looking at 90 million plus. Could that help us out with some funding if we do a combination of the two in one building?
I think the short answer is yes, they could be co-located. It's not unprecedented. I believe Moval actually has a very similar model, if I'm not mistaken, where they have a standalone EOC, Public Safety Center, next to Sheriff Station. So it can be done. It's just money.
It's money. And again, going back to that $143 million on the table right now, I think of what we want to be able to add to our CIP.
No, and I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth or sticker shock you guys, but all of these are projects that deserve this conversation.
Right.
And one of you in some way, shape, or form has brought this up, and my commitment was to bring it back. And so that's why we're having this conversation.
So I'm just putting it out to my council. Is that something, I don't even know where we're at with the EOC because that's further down, but is that something we'd even think of considering if it is even something we want to put together?
No, absolutely. I think from my perspective, combining the sheriff station and EOC would absolutely be a possibility. Something that can run intercourse and intertwined, and I think it's definitely something that we could look at moving forward.
I think the timelines on those two, though, are vastly different, right? So if we're talking sheriff station or equivalent, that's a decade plus long conversation. EOC is a need for, the near term. Splitting it up just from a cost standpoint kind of makes sense. And using infrastructure, I think that's part of the reason why the bill isn't, potentially, because we're not building a new building with the EOC, right? If we were, and contemplating, all that square footage, then I would say, reserve capacity, land and everything else to, put something together on a larger scale. But, I'm not sure that that's what we're contemplating with the EOC right now.
No, this just to be clear, the EOC number plugged there isn't very refined. I mean, I think we built that WAG based on conversations we had at the dais earlier in the spring about a full-scale standalone EOC, and the tech and everything that kind of could go into it. That's rough. That's a very rough estimate. So we haven't done any design. We haven't done any research. We do have one EOC that operates, let me remind everyone, out of the second floor here at City Hall. In the CIP, we have a secondary EOC that's funded, and what that entails is upgrades to the library next to Station 84, designed to be that contingency plan for a secondary EOC in the event that we can't get over here and the freeway is not has crippled things down. So we want one on the east side of the freeway, one on the west side of the freeway. We have a nominal amount of money invested in, I think it's like $750,000 or something like that, towards upgrading space at the library for just that purpose, to have a secondary EOC.
Okay.
I don't know, Mayor Pro Tem, if I answered your question, but yes, they could be co-located in a perfect world.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, no, just food for thought, just trying to think of ways to be able to combine
I don't think
things
it's, I don't know if it saves anything. I'm hearing different expectations on timelines, so
Okay.
maybe it doesn't
All
fit
right.
into the same equation. I don't know.
No, that's all good. So as of right now, I think the sheriff's station, I would pause on that. I would definitely be able to want to look at something once we get to the EOC part to see what that looks like for timeline. If that, I mean, who knows where this council is? I don't even know yet if that is within the next couple of years or if that is in the next 10 years after that. I have no clue as to what we're going to hear. So I'd like to just pause for myself and on the sheriff's station and just kind of get a reevaluation from listening to the council on the rest.
Thank you very much. No, I think I agree and understand what each of my colleagues came from, and I appreciate the subcommittee doing all the work, visiting those various police stations to see if one would be beneficial for the city of Temecula. But like Chief said, I think this warrants a healthy evaluation. I think it will continue to warrant a healthy evaluation, not just by this council, but by future councils. But I think at this time, I'm okay as well pausing on adding this to our current CIP budget. And with no further, I think we'd be okay moving on to the community garden.
Community garden, Council Member Stewart, I know you asked that this be tabled today, back in May at our workshop. This one does exist in some form in the Quality of Life Master Plan timeline. I think it's labeled as like a organic community garden, was what the community sort of weighed in on, but it's not site specific. So we don't have a location. I know many of you are thinking the city-owned Santiago vacant lot is maybe an ideal location to test something out or to begin conversations or put a little money away for some preliminary design work. So we're here today. And again, Councilman Stewart, I'll kind of kick it back to you. I'm sure you have some strong thoughts on that too. So.
Yeah, well, it came from actually community. The community itself came to me with this idea. And for me, it was more about creating overflow parking for Old Town, especially during major events, to if we did a community garden there, put in a large enough parking facility that would create the ability to just walk across Santiago Bridge and be in Old Town. But the community garden aspect of it would beautify that whole corner that we do own. And every time I go by it, I'm thinking how ugly it is. And I'm thinking, okay, what can we do with this property and still be able to get some ancillary use out of it for Old Town, with its parking issues, especially during our major events like the Christmas parade, the Rod Run, a lot of the major events, there's a lot of people park actually over in the Target Center and walk across the Rancho Bridge to get into Old Town. So I thought, if we could somehow couple a community garden along with a parking facility big enough to handle overflow, that would be able to come into, to me, it's a win-win. But open for discussion. It's not something I'm going to die on a hill for, but I thought if that's something we could utilize that corner and beautify it and bring something to the community other than a dirt lot. So.
Thank you very much, Stu. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. So one of the things I wanted to speak to this also, obviously, because it's in my district, as we're looking at Santiago Road right there and a possible community garden, whether organic, whatever that looks like, I would love to be able to see some opportunity for horse trails in there. The garden, just like Stu had stated, even parking. We know that there are opportunities for Old Town for people to park down there. Also for some of the other local churches right off of Santiago, there is a lot of going on and possibly needing some extra public parking, which would be beneficial to hundreds, if not more people. And so, but I think it would be absolutely beautiful to have. I think right now, I drive that thing every single day, I feel like, and it is an eyesore. And I would love to be able to see some beautification to that and just be able to kind of finalize that area in beauty. But yeah, I think that's where I am. I'm definitely in favor for this one. And also the other thing, what I would love to be able to look at is looking to see if we can get community involvement for this. So it's not just a city project, just not city, but how can we get the community involved, their hands to work? If we look at Ronald Reagan Sports Park was done by the community, a good portion of it. How can we do that so that way the taxpayers have and the residents have some in on it and can say 10 years down the road, we built that, we worked, we put our equity and sweat into that, and we'd love to see something new. So that would be my thought going forward, is definitely having community involvement, not just on thoughts and what that looks like, but actually their hands working in there and getting it done.
Thank you very much, MPT. Councilmember Schwenk?
Thank you very much. So, Mayor Pro Tem, I think what you said at the very end is the most important part of this. Like, this has to be a community-led project. If the community is in fact coming and saying, we would love this, well then let's do it. Often, we're sort of seen as like, we're trying to be everything to everyone at times. And we've had the resources, to do that in many respects. And some of these projects, like a community garden there would be fantastic, right? I don't know, the parking side of things. I know that's sort of like intuitively we feel like we need more parking right there. I think if you started adding parking and I mean, you're going to need some parking for the community garden because not everybody's going to ride their bike with their little basket on it to go pick their veggies, so you're going to have some parking there anyways. But I think if we're talking about like providing, sort of an auxiliary parking lot for Old Town, like you would cobble away that whole entire lot and there would be like, oh, you get 2 raised beds, yay. Like you get a few tomatoes. So like, I think we'd have to really, really look at the actual, like if we're trying to create overflow parking, I think, that's a whole separate conversation. We definitely need to engage the homeowners that live right there. I sort of suspect they would say, no, it's perfect the way it is. Like we don't want anything there. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't explore this. But I think if we do anything, this should be 100% community led. It should be much like what we're doing with the trails at Ronald Reagan Sports Park. This is, we took the several $1 million off the CIP project. It's, if you look on our sheet, it says unfunded, it's removed, right? Defunded, I think was the word that was used. And then we're turning this into a community led project where people come together. And that's a way for them to not only have buy-in, but then build community, get to know their neighbors. We have a community garden at the senior center, and it's not very large, but it's a mighty one. And during COVID, I recall going over there, picking veggies, taking them over to eat, and Leah made like soup. Then we threw all the soup in the car, and I was driving around like delivering stuff. There is a ton of value from a resiliency perspective to having community gardens. And so I would never say we shouldn't do this. We should absolutely do this. We should just try to figure out how we can do it with the community and not, create a monument sign on the corner where it says City of Temecula Community Garden, right? Like this needs to be a community garden, not a city facility. So I'm all in. I'll help make it happen. And I know there's folks out there that want the same thing.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Ron?
Yeah, no, I great concept. We had talked about this 10 years ago, I think, originally, and there wasn't a lot of will on the council at that time because of the cost, because of what it meant to transition that property. I'd be curious in the conversation of what we'd expect to reserve as far as parking is concerned, because that's, on a busy Temecula weekend, that thing, for overflow can get filled up pretty quickly and take up a large area. If you stripe it and make it a little bit more organized, maybe we can get some efficiencies there. But, what kind of parking are we looking at? 100 spots? And how much does that eat into the existing property? Because if you're mostly using it for parking and then a community garden on the back side, then I kind of don't see the point. You might as well just make it all parking with some great islands and planted, trees or something. But if you want to lean into the concept of a community garden, because we don't really have that sort of central park kind of Balboa Park sort of thing going on in town, right? This, from a property perspective, was an acquisition that maybe the city should never have done, years ago. But, we landed this property for a variety of reasons, and it's a difficult one to do anything with, especially given the homeowner association and neighbors. This, I feel like, is the least impactful use and probably most beneficial for both the neighborhood and beautification, but the community in general. I think the partnerships already exist. MSJC has been talking for years about, expanding their viticulture enology programs, having some space to do some of their culinary programs and local grown, produce and so forth. This lends itself well to that. It gets complicated when it's community garden because who's paying for the water? Who's paying for the, that's going to be the problem. And if it's community led, I don't know, you need a big partner in this to really pull something like that off. And so I could see us, and what I'd like to see happen here is maybe a conversation between, and we had talked about this years ago with Rancho Water, doing demonstration gardens on, we could work with Cal Fire and others on demonstration gardens for fire resistant plants, things that work well in drought tolerant situations, and some of the sprinklers, controllers, other, equipment that Rancho recommends for cutting down on water use and making more efficient creating that kind of ethic around there. And then having the education piece where, maybe MSJC or Cal State or somebody starts to use the property. I'd love to see that move forward as a potential. And I think that, like I said, I think the partnerships already exist to kick something like that off.
Thank you very much. No, I agree with my colleagues. I think that the community garden is something that we would all like to see. Just comes down to funding. And I think community-driven, community-led project would be great as well. I think that particular area with Santiago Estates right there and the equestrian community, and like we touched on earlier with the in our CIP project is the Yanez widening, but that could be changed to an equestrian trail on that side. I think Temecula considers itself an equestrian community in totality with the different neighborhoods as Santiago Estates and Los Ranchitos and Meadowview, but we don't have a public equestrian facility for staging, for trail rides, and I think that location may be a good location for future discussion on that. And I don't know if they could be intertwined, the community garden with the equestrian facility, but I think that's definitely worth talking to that community and pursuing down the road. Because I know Meadowview has a private, equestrian facility right there, but I think a public community one would be very well liked by that community, but all for future discussion. But I am not opposed whatsoever to a community garden. I think that is much needed, and I think that the community wants that. Do you want to touch on anything, MPT?
What is the size of that property, by the way?
You know how many acres that is?
That's pretty big.
Santiago? Is it 5 acres maybe?
I think I heard
Higher?
7.72 is that what I heard?
8.
8. Okay.
I'm hearing 8 from the
8.
gentleman in
You're in
the
7.
audience.
Okay, so
8
pretty big
acres.
area. So yeah, I think there's just a lot.
But there is constraints to that property, and I was going to bring this up. You can obviously tell there's drainage, I believe. I don't know if it's a blue line. I don't know, but we manage kind of overflow, things of that nature right through the center of it. So that does cut through there. That will affect whatever parking lots development, that'll go in there. But what I'm hearing is clearly enough support to probably create a CIP sheet site specific to the Santiago property. We don't have a number because we don't really know what's to be built there, but we can formalize this by creating a CIP sheet. We can begin by having some serious conversations with the HOA. I think that's totally appropriate. And other community stakeholders. And what I loved hearing today from the council too, there's another example very similar to this or your vision, and it's the Rose Garden, which is a stone's throw from there, which is a nonprofit that does an amazing job managing this beautiful small footprint of property for the enjoyment of the community. And if we can do that on this, it's kind of a win-win for everyone. And it might have equine, it might have some parking, it might have community garden, it might have all of that. But I think we heard enough support for this to begin some serious conversations, and we're willing to start with that. If that's good for you all.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. Moving on to the EOC.
Yeah, we kind of touched on this. Councilman Ron, maybe you want to elaborate on this. That again, this was kind of what was part of the staff report when we came back a few times to the council talking about overall public safety, CWPP business, wildland, veg clearing, code enforcement. The whole package. This was a small piece of that overall fire protection thing. So, Councilman Ron.
Yeah, I'd pull it. I mean, it's clearly important when we have a large disaster, right? I mean, that's really all this is a decent insurance policy for the city. I'll say the current EOC we have at City Hall, I got to spend some time with law enforcement in particular there and our EOC manager during a couple of recent incidents to just kind of see how the site is used and the advantage of having one of these. And I got to say, I was impressed. I mean, they managed the incident extremely well. They had, resources there. There were some things, where it's like, yeah, if we invest more in certain technologies, certain opportunities, I think we could do a much better job. But overall, I think having one of these in the city is critically important. So the question really comes down to, for me, is how much do we want to invest in something? Because again, it's just your insurance policy. And I don't want to go cheap and just say, just propping up something, is good. I think we need to, consider exactly what's necessary, not just from a fire perspective, but from, sort of that multi-use perspective whether it's floods, earthquake, major law enforcement issues, whatever that might be, right? That's outside of, my scope of expertise. I mean, I've got some ideas, but, $10 million, it seems, like a high price tag, to be honest. And it's not that, again, I don't want to create this sort of de minimis version of an EOC either. So what does it really look like? And can we put some real numbers to it? I know we have, there is always a need to have a backup EOC at the library, something that's, distinct from the current in case, whatever. So I'm glad to see that we're planning and moving forward with that as well. But by no means do I think it's, a $10 million project. And that's why I, talking about, co-locating with this future sheriff station concept, it's real premature in my mind because I don't think we're even close to that or having a standalone building or anything along those lines. I think this is something that may be, either retrofitting what we already have at City Hall or taking over space at Old City Hall to create something. And then again, sort of sizing it to what the needs are and what the technology should be. And I would rely on police and fire and our EOC manager to help guide that. And there's national standards on, check boxes of what should be in these things in the first place, and recommendations on all of that. So, I don't think there's a whole lot that we have to figure out on that end. So that's all I've got.
No, just a couple things before the council weighs in on this one. I agree. Mr. Alford does an amazing job with that discipline and with the space and the tech that he has. Could there be more? Always. This is one of those disciplines that I've talked with him a lot about and Chief Crater. And I think it's ripe for grant funding to be super competitive. And so, whether we're in DC or whether we're in SAC, whether these are emergency management grants, I would assume you'd want us to continue to be diligent in that endeavor because you could get a good amount of whatever the scope of your EOC to be funded by somebody else. Maybe it's a match. I think that breaks up something like this, in bite-sized pieces, probably better. If the goal today is just to keep this on the radar, I'd suggest making it put it in the back of the CIP as a reminder that we should be continuing to work towards that year over year. So just a couple thoughts.
Yes, I think yes and no on that one. I think that the full concept requires a lot more thought put into it. Right now, and I'm again going to rely on law enforcement and fire protection to answer these questions. But right now we have a functional EOC, right? I mean, I'm assuming. It looked pretty good to me.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So if that's the case, then, and not to, belabor the point, but there are some probably technology pieces and short-term gains that could be identified with the EOC manager, fire and law enforcement that would, elevate that to the capacity that we need. There may be some gaps. I see that as a much shorter term, 6, 12, 18-month time frame. And then the concept of, as we start to build this out, I don't think we need to, you're 100% right, Mr. Adams, is I don't think we need to put a $10 million CIP on the sheets right now. I think we just have a placeholder that says, let's stopgap what we need for the immediate future and then make some decisions down the road of, do we really need to expand this? Because we are a city of just, 110,000 people. Maybe with plans of, another, like we heard, 20, 30, that's a general plan sort of, issue that we'll be dealing with. But do we really need that massive of an expansion in this? And I don't have the answer to that. And I certainly want us to be a safe city. But, for now, that'd be my recommendation is, let's get those short-term needs and then throw everything back on the CIP in the back.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Ron. Councilmember Stu?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, and this is another perfect example of utilizing City Hall for its maximum efficiency, because having the EOC here and having our Sheriff's Department here creates that synergy, and having the seat of government here, again, creates that synergy for a disaster. I mean, if there's a disaster, we all want to know what's going on. And so it's important that we have it here. And so I really like the idea of keeping it here. And that's why I don't necessarily see a need to create a center somewhere else. But I do agree. I think we do need to keep it high on our priority list as far as federal and state funding. Any kind of grants that are made available, we should have that piece of paper in and trying to grab some of it, because you can always use more equipment, more software, more. I mean, there's always more. And so if we can somehow create tentacles out there to look for all these grants that are available for EOCs, I think we should be pursuing those all the time. So I like the EOC right here, and I like the fact that we have one on the other side of the freeway, because in case the freeway goes down for any reason, you're going to need that on that side also. So I think what we've got is really, really good. And so could we be more efficient? Yeah, let's look for those opportunities. But I don't think we need to consider a center anywhere, but that's my opinion.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Stu. Councilmember Schwenk?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so I agree with what's been said so far. Councilmember Ron, his points, and then Councilmember Stewart as well. I like, what we have now. Can always be better, and maybe we should look into some sort of mobile command options as well. I just watched the Hurricane Katrina documentary. If you haven't watched it, you should go home right now and go watch it. It was very impactful to see, and how being prepared is so important to our health and safety and sanity in the event of a major event. And, we don't know what that event could be. It likely could be fire or earthquake. It might not be a hurricane, but we should be prepared nonetheless. If at anything is to keep us out of a documentary as looking like we completely failed. So those are things that we should be concerning ourselves with. Like I said, what we have now I think is great. I haven't been to the EOC during an emergency event. I'll go up there during Rod Run, let's say, or some other events, and it seems like it functions quite well. But I know, much like, with a lot of other things that happen, if something were to happen, the vast portion of Southwest Riverside County is going to look to the city of Temecula. And I think we need to be prepared to lead out on anything, even if the direct threat isn't directly in our community. I think we need to be prepared to help our neighboring cities and residents as well. So any investments we can make in this, continuing to expand over the library, again, like adding some mobile command options, I think we should continue to do that. And it is important to add things like this to the back of the CIP because it is that reminder. And I remember years ago looking through the CIP and it's like, oh, this is a level 3 or a level 4. It's just sort of like it's there, but it just stays in your mind. And then it sort of becomes reality. So it should go in the that future project section of the CIP.
Thank you very much. Councilman Ron?
Can I just add one thing? I was just thinking that the EOC for Lake Elsinore that was done a couple of years ago, maybe just ask them how much it cost. I mean, it's been done, but the reason I also is it was a partnership with the county, right? If I know that correctly, because the county paid for the bulk of it, not the city of Lake Elsinore. I don't know if I'm getting that information correct or not, but that's my recollection was that it was. If that's the case, maybe we, in sort of the funding search for something like this, find out what they did, but also reach out to the county and say, hey, because this is a resource for them too, right? It's not, I mean, anything that happens here, whether it's out in Duluth or out, unincorporated areas of the city, it's still an important resource for them as well. So maybe this is something we contemplate doing in collaboration and seeing what their interest and their needs are at that level. So just throwing that out there.
We can absolutely look into that. I don't know what the cost is, and I don't know if either chief is prepared to answer that today, unless you know.
I don't think it's 10 million. I heard it was 3 to 4. So
We'll follow up.
we'll look into it more.
Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes. So I had several questions, and I think everything's been answered but one. And I was just curious, what limitations exist right now in our current EOC setup, and what operational or strategic advantages would a new proposed site of an EOC provide?
I don't see Mr. Alfred here. He probably has a list of equipment or antiquated resources that he wants to upgrade, tools related to the existing EOC. Chief Crater, if you know and you want to speak to, maybe their radios, maybe their other tech platform things that would be nice that we don't currently have. So I'm going to defer to you today on what the wish list, and that would be one of my things to go back to Mr. Alford and Chief Crater after this workshop and better understand where the gaps may be that you, Councilman Ron, mentioned. I'm not prepared to speak to those. I don't know what they are. So.
I'll take a swag at it. 52 people on a team, when we're talking about space, it's space, right? It's when you're communicating with a team and they're decentralized or in other rooms or in other spaces. I think when we go through our training, there is some lag and maybe it doesn't run quite as smooth as it should. We get by, definitely. The COC is on the 3rd floor. Earthquakes, is it going to be here? I'm just thinking all the things that could possibly happen. That's the space of emergency management, and that's what kind of keeps Michael up at night, or would keep me up at night, thinking about keeping the community running safely. I think the big misnomer is when bad things happen, fire and police were out doing operational things, and the EOC is a nerve center to keep the city running. Lights, power, roads, like all those things. It's not the actual emergency itself. It's keeping the city running, having, commerce and things still continue in your city. I think when bad things do happen, the faster you could get things up and running, the safer the community is going to be. And I think if you have the space to do that and you're equipped and you prepare for it, you're going to be way ahead in the long run. So I think Councilmember Swank, when you talked about Katrina and planning and all these things, like where are these things located? Are they in the right spot? Are they? Or do you have the space and the technology? And I don't really lean on technology that much, because when things like that happen, what's the first thing that goes away? Technology. So it's nice to have all these fancy things, but it's good to have a backup when you're talking about ham radios, when you're talking about other things or other ways of communication. Our city network that we have that we manage with IT and being able to communicate in our own radio systems. It's a big it's a big responsibility, and I can see why, we do spend a lot of time on it training, but I think it's more to look into, and I'll talk to Michael and get the city manager a list.
Mayor Pro Tem, I can give you a real life example, a couple things on this topic. And don't disagree, space in a perfect world is probably ideal, for what. But it was 2 weeks ago, we held a full-on drill. I'm talking a 3-hour drill. The city of Temecula employees are broken into 2 teams. You heard the chief. We got 54 on one team. We got 54 on another team. They, by nature, are disaster service workers. Therefore, we need to do this training. I was a part of the red team. And again, 2 weeks ago, we did a full-on 3-hour drill here. Now, we started our day in the EOC. The footprint is small, so it was a little tight. But what we did was we basically briefed in there on the scenario, on the situation, and we were tabletopping. And Michael and Chief Crater had pre-set things, which we appreciated. And then the respective teams went to other parts of City Hall. This is probably how we would do it if something went really bad. So we had a logistics team, meeting in the Great Oak Conference Room. We had a planning meeting in the finance room. We split up from the EOC. We utilized this whole building because it essentially would be locked down, and we'd be working through our day, and we'd be running the city. Then, using technology in this drill, we were convening every 45 minutes back in the EOC. We were getting updates from our section chiefs, and we were making it work. Was it ideal? It would have been a lot easier probably to be under this roof right here in the conference center, which we didn't do. But maybe this is a better footprint for an EOC right here because you can fit a lot more people in here. Mm-hmm. But in the case of what we just drilled on, we wanted to use this as a joint information center or a JIC. So it was occupied with the press corps and things of that nature while we were in the EOC. So that's what we're doing, kind of behind the scenes. And I just wanted to share that as well. Chief, you look like you were going to add something to that.
I think we're talking about the future, and you're talking about fire stations and EOC and training centers and all these things. Yeah, it could be a huge complex, right? That's where a one-stop can be in the future, and that would be great. I think a lot of other states and folks look into consolidating big projects like this. But I think the drill that we had here last week and the one we're going to have in a few months from now worked well. There's always room for improvement. I think that's what this city does very well is look at how we can improve. And I think when you're looking at your CIP monies and it's in the quality of life master plan, it's something to look at and it's something to think about. If something happened today or tomorrow, I have no doubt that the team that we have assembled here at City Hall would be able to not only manage it, but come out on really good footing. So thank you for the conversation.
No, sorry, one final thing, Mayor Pro Tem, and then I promise to stop. What I described was like a full-scale kind of, massive. We had sheriff office in there, we had CAL FIRE in there, we had volunteers in there, we had city employees in there. So there was a lot going on. Just this past weekend, I think Lieutenant Pearson shared with the council that they were monitoring protests at the duck pond for make sure that, guess where he's doing it from this footprint here. So on small scale, things like that, the technology, the surveillance, everything, it does exist today. Those tools exist to allow our sheriff's department to monitor without being on site. They're utilizing EOCs where necessary. They're utilizing the storefront where necessary. So I just wanted to add that.
Okay. Thank you very much. And so just my recommendation for me, what I'm hearing is the equipment needs to be updated. There's things internally that need to be updated and maybe get us current, because I don't know if that's part of the 10 million or
I don't know.
Okay.
I honestly don't know where the gaps are with Mr. Alford. I need to look into that.
Okay. I think for me, my recommendation would be to put this in the back, but yet find out exactly that question I had and what are the limitations, and seeing how we can update the current EOCs right now is that we have 2 OCs currently operating until those are completely, we can't utilize them anymore. I'd love to be able to get a bigger EOC. It'd be great. But again, we don't have the exact amount currently right now. We don't have a location. So maybe investigating that a little bit more, coming back to the council and bringing a little bit better of a proposal so we know what we're voting on. But I wouldn't say right now to go find a center right now, but let's get the places and the equipment updated for the first responders in order to do a better, more accurate job in what they're needing. That would be my recommendation.
And Mr. City Manager, I'd agree with the majority of my colleagues. We're back of CIP and look at what we can do to fill in the gaps for the current EOC that we have. In regards to the fire training center, I would probably be willing to say that a majority of my colleagues would be on a similar platform as that, not to put $30 million, but if I want to be conscious of everyone's time. We are 15 minutes past noon here. We can maybe go through that one quickly and see where everyone lands, Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, real quick. It is mentioned in the QLMP as either a public goal or a public-private goal. It was mentioned earlier today. Councilman Ron probably knows this better than I. I'll pass this around. These are some really beautiful renderings of a public safety training facility proposed in Marietta between the police and fire, MSJC, and Pechanga. To my knowledge, there is no available construction funding related to this, unless you've heard differently. I'm sure they're pursuing grants and things of that nature. And we don't currently have a CIP sheet in ours for contributions to a regional or a standalone for the city of Temecula, but kind of looking for the consensus of the council, how you want to address this, where it belongs.
Councilman Ron, want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, public safety infrastructure, anything we can do to improve that, by all means. I'll say the Marietta project, as far as I know, is just a really nice brochure. And they don't have any other real dedicated funds or clear partnerships to do anything, right? And I think they've got some property that they're looking at and some potential, but it's a substantial investment. MSJC is also looking at this from some of their programs and education training facilities as well. It's definitely something the city could take advantage of. I know Pechanga has been talked to about it as well. A regional center is fine. The whole goal here is to meet sort of the expectations of what training should be within our own resources in the city. And then be able to backfill with whatever we don't currently have, whether that's a training tower or what, and doing this on our, if there's minimums, and Chief Crater could probably speak to this a lot better than I could, minimums of what could be done, on a budget to meet expectations to reach that ISO of 1. And then there's, a full-on regional training center where we have, state, local, federal, tribal partners all participating in it. and then, you know, I always question, well, we have Ben Clark. I mean, you know, it's not that far away, you know? And so it's like, we do have a training center, and uniquely, because there aren't a lot of those of that scale and of that type in California at all. And so for us to have that, you know, within a 30-minute drive or so with good traffic is, you know, a big advantage. So what does all that mean? I don't know the answer to that. And I'm not about to sit here and try and advocate for a $30 million investment on the CIP. But, you know, again, this may be something we want to talk about, like with the EOC. What are the gaps that we have right now that we should be contemplating? And then, you know, what could the long-term plan be if regionally we want to do something? Because I like what Myriad is talking about. I love the concepts, but, you know, if it's not meeting our goals as a city, or if they don't have the partners to really pull something like this off, you know, then we need to figure out our own solutions. So I'll let Chief Crater weigh in on this as well.
I think you did a great job. I have nothing to add. No, I think when you do look at the price tag here, it is.
Excuse me, sir, that's not what those words mean. We're just going to start there.
Well, I hear it all the time. Every time I'm in these meetings, they're like, no, I have nothing to add. And then they go on for a half hour. No, thank you for supporting the training center. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chief. I think the majority of my colleagues, we all agree on the exploration of a fire training center regionally and seeing what we can do to benefit our myriad of partners as well as other partners, including Pechanga. So more exploration on the fire training center, but leaving off the 30 million plus out of our CIP budget.
Yeah, and can you just get us a pricing on just a fire training tower, something like that? If we were able to do something, you know, on that sort of smaller scale, what that would look like? Because I have no idea, but I know you guys have experience building those out in Ben Clark.
Got it. I got the direction, and that's helpful. So thank you. And good job. I know we went a little long. This was very helpful for both teams.
Thank you very much to my colleagues and for city staff for bearing with us, and the public for watching on YouTube. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there still paying attention. Have a great rest of your day.